Today on Hot Program, we are interviewing the one and only James Apperson. Let's go. Welcome everybody to Hot Program. I am your host with the most from the East Coast, and I am joined by a man who has read the entire Bible many times and now no longer believes in any gods at all. How you doing? A man who needs no introduction, my one black friend. And folks, as you know, we don't mess around here. We have been scouring the interwebs, deep in the community, trying to figure out who could we interview that is interesting and amazing and has wonderful things to teach us and share with us. And folks, I have found one of your favorites, a person I know you love interacting with in those chats, in those comment sections, and reading his blogs and catching him on YouTube. Welcome to Hot Program, James Apperson. We are super excited that you could join us today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I normally turn things over to my one black friend because he is our resident Bible nerd. And he likes for people to get started with their favorite Bible verses. But on today's occasion, I thought I'd do something a little bit different, which is that instead of Bible verses, because I figured that might not be so much your thing, I recently found your blog post, and I found this to really speak to me. And so if it's okay with you guys, I thought at least I'll start with maybe the beginning of this, get my one black friend's thoughts, and then maybe we can jump into this and we can talk about this, and wherever the conversation goes from there, we'll let it go. Is that cool with you guys?
It's cool with me. Fair warning to everyone. It's a fairly long blog. I really probably need to cut it in two at some point, but.
Yeah. I thought we might not get the whole thing because I was scrolling through it, and I haven't read the whole thing myself because I like to kind of react to things in person, but I read the beginning and I was like, oh, this is super good. We should definitely talk about this. Quick shout out, Cameron, BCS Lewis, KCA Randy, see you guys. Thanks so much for being here, chat. Links in the description if you want more from me or more from my one black friend. And folks, follow James Apperson on Facebook. He's pretty easy to find. You can find this blog post. He posted this on June 29th, 2022. It's entitled, this first title, Understanding Religion's Relationship to Human Social Systems. Is this like a theme you have?
That's the blog category, yeah.
That's the blog category.
Right.
Great. And then the title is What Christians Are Actually Recruiting For and Who That Actually Works On. All right, guys.
Right.
Many people who identify as Christian, quote unquote, don't really bother with the details. They just casually identify with Jesus, believe in God, and that's about it. But the larger phenomenon they aren't paying much attention to is a con game. That game doesn't work on sufficiently mature adults. This is why so many end up leaving it. People grow. If they grow fast enough, they'll have time to grow mentally tall enough without even expecting to. They can suddenly see what it was really all about. Sorry. However, it does often attract and hold people who have certain prerequisite vulnerabilities. Wondering if you're the sort of person it works on? Let's find out. All right, so let's stop there. Here's the wind up in the pitch. Yeah. Tell us what you're thinking here. By the way, I just want to say I really like the way this is written. I'm a big fan of ellipses and making sure you use punctuation to get the reader to pause for dramatic effect where you want them to. And I really enjoy your writing. And it's always new. This is why we do this, to discover things about the community, right? And I've always just seen you in chats or popping up on panels. And I read this and thinking, man, I'm a big fan of James's writing. But go ahead.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What were you thinking with this? Just kind of lead us into this.
All right. So whenever I write a blog like this of a very complex nature, it goes through several revisions because I always have to go back and uh, temper the parts that are maybe a bit too sharp and specify the parts that are maybe a bit too broad because I want to make certain necessary distinctions. I don't think that everybody who identifies as Christian is actively part of some con game. I think that they, some people who just don't think that much about it are kind of outside that phenomenon because they're not actively engaged with it. But it's tricky for me because when I go on the Bread of Life live streams, I'm trying to be so fair because that's her channel. And I don't want to go on her channel and try to sabotage what she's trying to accomplish.
Right. And you're talking about Rebecca from Bread of Life, right. Examining Evolution. We actually interviewed Rebecca a couple weeks ago. Thanks for the plug. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and check that out. But yeah, go ahead.
So it's a catch-22 for me because I'm talking with two audiences. The atheist skeptical audience, I want to encourage them to take ownership of their own lives and recognize with confidence that the whole darn thing is a crazy con game. But when I'm talking with Christians, with believers, I don't want to come at it from that angle at all because I want them to simply keep maturing, keep growing, because I know that the inevitable result is that if they're in a harsh version of Christianity, it will gradually temper itself. It will soften. All the edges will soften, and it will become more secular without them even meaning to. And Rebecca, without realizing, is kind of already on that path.
Sure.
And sure, absolutely. And I want to encourage that, not just for her, but for the Christians, because I don't think that coming out full force attacking Christianity is necessarily the answer. Certainly banning it wouldn't be the answer, even if we could do that. The real answer is just nurturing progress with the ideals of the secular Enlightenment and try to help these people gradually grow, because otherwise...
Hang on one second. Scott Stell, are you referring to the gradually becoming more secular? When you say, does he really believe that? I wonder exactly what you're referring to. But continue, James. And yes, James genuinely believes that. But I'm not even going to ask you that, but go ahead.
As soon as we get confirmation what he means, I'll be happy to.
Sure. So he said yes. He said yes. About the progressing towards something more secular. So I guess maybe say a little bit more why you think it, because I guess some people could say sometimes, it goes the opposite way, right? And you progress into something more extremist or whatever. So what sort of pulls you into the optimist position there?
So with increasing exposure to persons of secular values, there is a natural sociological effect on the way that people think. We normalize certain ways of thinking and behaving that aren't necessarily normalized within conservative echo chambers. And so that's what happened with the Quakers. The Quakers rose up at one point and led the abolitionist movement in America. And, of course, they want to say, well, God directed their steps to do so. And it's tricky because while I know that that's not true, God didn't do any such thing. The only way to encourage that kind of growth is to humor the premise, to say, okay, sure, that's what you want to believe, whatever, go with that. So I don't want to directly challenge that idea when it's when they're basically giving themselves license or permission to grow. And if they feel like the only way to give themselves license and permission to grow is for them to suppose that they're doing so under the inspiration of a God, then that simply is the only way they're going to go through that growth. And so that's what happened with the Quakers. That's what happened with the stories of Jesus. Because if you go back to the stories of Jesus, no matter how much of it's true or not true, talking about a guy who for his day was very progressive. And so he wasn't saying, let's get rid of Judaism. He was saying, let's go for a more progressive approach to how we interpret and enforce these laws.
A kind of gentler Judaism or Hebraic law.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, it's that ideal. People that are deeply psychologically rooted in those cultures need to feel like they have sanction from their God to do that progressing.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly say, Scott Stell, I think we've obviously see what's going on in the USA currently. James, are you in the US? Where are you at?
I am. So I'm in the Bible Belt part of it, Indiana. So.
Yeah, but I think
where I'm from.
I think that also speaks to kind of your point, because I think a lot of those people are not exposing themselves deeply to secular, people. But also, I would say that what this makes me think of, and I want to make sure my one black friend gets in here, but what this does remind me of is peer learning, right? Which isn't always effective, but one of the things I've really learned, and there's good research on this, is basically I could say something all day long as a teacher, and a lot of students will get it. For a lot of students, though, it goes in one ear, out the other. One of their peers can say the same exact thing and the light bulb will go off and they just get it, right? It's just a magic to the peer credibility thing or whatever. Now, does this work all the time? No. But one of the really powerful things that makes it work so well and makes it work reliably, and this is kind of, I think, to back up your point, is there's this thing where overwhelmingly, by and large, it's easier for students who have the right answer to convince students who don't have the right answer to change their mind. Now, does every once in a while you get a student who has the right answer to change that right answer to a wrong answer because they were convinced by the student who was wrong? That does happen once in a while, but very rarely. Why? Because that student's wrong, right? And so if most of us at the end of the day have humanist values at some level, like it's better not to steal, it's better not to kill, what you're kind of saying is if you expose yourself to secular, those of us that are influenced in the right direction, there's going to be sort of a gravitational pull. Yeah, you're going to pull some people the other way once in a while, but overall, the sort of overwhelming mass of pro-socialism probably is going to pull people gradually towards a more reasonable position. And after that, I just want to make sure my one black friend gets in and said, but thanks for humoring my teacher analogy.
Thank you. Pocket Locker, can you pull up his blog again?
Yeah, you don't see it?
I see the images of us.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to scroll up to the text?
Oh, yeah, that'd be fantastic. So, I want to just jump in here. That game doesn't work on sufficiently mature adults. You didn't, a little further down, you comment, however, it does attract and hold people who have certain prerequisite vulnerabilities. We do see in the church today, if we look at Kenneth Copeland's audience, you see a lot of seniors in there, a lot of senior citizens in that audience.
Sure, absolutely.
And I do think in many churches you have a senior citizen audience because it was their lifestyle, right? These are people they've grown with and they've watched them have families and have had enduring friendships with. And I do wonder how often that is the reason for staying in church when you see how things have deteriorated and continue to do so in the world. Also, you see the progress, but the progress might even seem to be pushing those people out or giving them that feeling that they're being pushed out. And church is all they have left. So I do want to let people know, I can see in here, you've acknowledged that. You acknowledge that that's a factor that's, it's not always so obvious. I know there's a lot of focus on the youth of today in the United States not being as religious as previous generations. I think that's only going to intensify. I do too. I think there's certain factors at work we read about how the internet impacts things. And I feel this Supreme Court decision to where a teacher can pray in school is really going to do it. I think that's going to work against them. And they are not prepared for how awful it's going to be because of that one thing, because there are going to be students like I was who go, no, wait a second. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus says you're not supposed to be doing this. You can go into your closet and pray, but you're not supposed to do it. Why? So we can see you pray? Is that it? So fantastic. Right. Congrats on being righteous. Go you. That was awesome. Now, can you please teach me something about the world that I can use?
Yeah. Now, I want to quickly just say shout outs to Lena. Appreciate you coming through, dropping bombs. Thank you for your support, and we appreciate to have you listening, even if you can't chat as much as you'd like. But this is why we need atheist churches. That's what we're doing. That's what we're all about around here.
James, can you comment on that, please?
And also, we'd love to talk to T-Chump about it more. But yeah, go ahead, James. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
the atheist church thing. I mean, I totally get that. And I watched what happened when there was atheist, quote unquote, churches on the West Coast near Seattle. Mm-hmm. And the problem that they found was that they were polarizing in ways that were actually causing sects, atheist sects, to branch off with different ideas about, what it means to be atheist in a meaningful sense, because atheism by itself, just the word, only means you don't believe in a god. Mm-hmm. To get any further than that, you have to add something to it, like secular humanism. You can't just there has to be more than that.
Yes,
and so
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say I spent a lot of time thinking through this, and I certainly don't think that what we're trying to do is like a one-stop shop or a solution. And to be honest, it's a parody, right? You have to understand what we're trying to do with the Cult of the Flying Man is a parody church, right? Like, let's just be clear about that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, the same way Satanism is, right? But what I realized was that politically they could do things. Like I was really motivated when I saw them oppose earlier, attempts at the state level to attack reproductive rights, because they said, no, your anti-abortion stance violates my religious value of bodily autonomy. And I was like, ooh, I see what y'all did there. I like that. Yeah, that's very clever, right? And then I liked how they said, oh, you're going to have a national day of prayer? Great, cool. We'll meet you at the state capitol in the rotunda. Hail Satan, right. And they have Aaron Ra giving the speech. And then they're like, oh, cool, y'all like religious statues? Yeah, we want a Beelzebub at the Baphomet, right?
Yeah.
So I
That's what I love about the Satanists.
Yeah, I loved it. And what I recognized, James, and this is great for us to talk about this amongst our community, is I just said the Cult of the Flying Man is kind of our own thing. Like we've got our kind of our own little counter-apologetic that we like to rally around. And I think it's an effective one, because it's basically the outsider test of faith, right? For me, the outsider test of faith has always been one of the most powerful things. The Cult of the Flying Man is kind of just a fun little internet meme twist on it. And the other thing is teaching. When I teach my class, we teach about the Raelians, right? I teach this class called Darwin's Law. I'm always going on about this because Rob Pennock, he was the expert witness in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial that he said that, intelligent design creationism isn't science and it shouldn't be taught in the science classroom. And so really that guy is now a professor of digital evolution at Michigan State University, and I happen to be teaching Darwin's Law with him, right? And when we teach our students this class, it's a unbelievable, like, knock myself over, pinch myself, I can't believe this is my job type of thing, right? By the way, we're hoping to stream it this semester too, so look for that coming up. But we teach this, and we teach the Raelians, who people don't know. The Raelians is this religion that believes in a creation narrative, but they believe it was natural. They believe there's like a supreme race of beings that, like kind of use our planet as a little laboratory, and they're kind of playing around with us, right?
Sure.
And the point is that this is a creation myth, and obviously the religious right would never want you to teach this in a class.
Right.
And so it's just kind of used as an example of, hey, you guys want to be, say creation narrative should be in the classroom. Well, would you let us teach the Raelians? Obviously not. And so that's literally part of his book is explaining this, right? And so I kind of noticed that the whole flying man thing was like a similar kind of Trojan horse, right? Like,
sure.
Yeah. And so
that was the flying spaghetti monster kind of.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. It reminded me of the flying spaghetti monster thing. But again, the flying spaghetti monster thing is just out there in the world. There's already an established church of that. It has nothing to do with us. Whereas as like Pine Creeksters, we could be like, hey, the flying man's our thing, But yeah, so just to speak to this quickly, I thought that was useful because I don't think we're going to grow or become like super powerful or influencing, but maybe now we could write a letter and sign a petition and say, hey, and again, to speak to your point, you have to add some stuff to it, right? So we really looked into this. We realized you have to have values. So our values are like humanism, science and critical thinking or something like that. Some stuff we could actually all probably say we're on board with, right? But now we could probably write a letter to the state capitol and say, hey, the cult of the flying man, not that you care about us, but we really think you're violating our humanist bodily autonomy with these Roe v. Wade laws. And by the way, we would love to see a statue of Myron flying over the Grand Canyon outside the courthouse. Now, do I think they're going to do it? No, but I actually thought it'd be fun, and we could probably get some funny streams out of making it and sending it off, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But then sort of
make a statement.
Right, but then the other thing kind of really started to touch me, like the need for community and the need to just get together regularly. And so what started as kind of a joke, part of it was I looked at the John Oliver, church, Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption, how to fund a tax-exempt church skit or whatever. Oh, yeah. And so I looked up we looked at the IRS codes to figure out what you got to do to actually be a church. And so we started to build those things into the stream. That way, when we go to file the paperwork, we're like, yeah, we do. And so it became like, hey, I do actually host these shows regularly. We get together every Sunday. We tend to study words together. And I built in a little communion ritual, and we've got our ushers and our deacons. And so it's just become fun. But I just wanted to briefly circle back to the idea that this whole need for an atheist church, I really think is just a human need for community. And what we're saying is just because you no longer believe the claims of a religion doesn't mean you forego those human needs.
Sure, and Carl Jung wrote extensively about this, and I think Jordan Peterson largely misunderstood Carl Jung in ironic ways, but he recognized that we need community and meaning and things like that, but what we don't need is the magical, mystical thinking, and we certainly don't need to politicize special interests to where we leverage power and authority over others. Well, we need an equitable society is what we need, where those people can think and live how they want to, and so can those people over there. And I think that needs to be the goal.
Go ahead. James, do you think that things like sorry to ruin it for you, Pocket Locker. Do you think, because if I get elected, if I ever become president of the United States,
you're getting rid of that?
This is going to go on the first day if I can help it. I'm going to get rid of the exemption for clergy, so they have to pay taxes.
In principle, I love the idea.
Do you think that is when I see that, it seems to me that that's a way to keep those who administer the religion to the religious in their back pockets, the politicians, to do that. Because, hey, look, we're giving you something and you're saving thousands, if not millions of dollars a year because we do this for you. If you don't support us, we can take it away. We can make it so you have to pay that. Because even Jesus, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar. So he's saying you got to pay your taxes. But do you think does that in any way happen to advance society, or nope? It's another one of those things that is not advancing society. It holds us back from progress that we could do.
Sure, I agree 100%. So my biggest concern about that, about taxing the churches, and in principle I agree with doing that. The
clergy.
Yeah. What I don't want to do if we were to tax the churches or tax the clergy, is kind of give them an open ticket to go ahead and become overly politicized, where they exert pressure on billions of people to think and vote a certain way, and they're like able to do that without any restriction now because now they're taxed. So we would need to make sure there are certain laws in place to make sure that they can't exert mass undue influence over the way people vote, because that would come back to bite.
I also wonder sometimes. I
think that's already happening. I think they're already doing it. Sorry, if you look at any of these guys that Telltale Atheist has on his channel, where he profiles them, or if you look at Pastor Greg Locke, up there hooting and hollering, Trump won, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even need to be embarrassed, because that crowd is with him. I don't know what percentage.
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
There he is doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing, and there's no backlash. There's
none. They'll never do it. You know what?
Nothing.
I'll give you an interesting anecdote because of that, and this ties into a lot of these things that come up. This is one of the things I love about a parody religion, is I hope something doesn't work in the parody religion as a reflection of the real religion. So one of the things I did think about with this, right, when I started this was, whoa, I got to be careful talking about politics. Like last night, I covered a Trump rally, right? I was like, well, what if I actually file for a tax exemption, get it, and then they're like, hey, man, you did this Trump rally and you were trashing Donald Trump, right? As a tax-exempt atheist church, you're not supposed to be endorsing or talking against particular candidates, right? Like, I literally thought through that. I was like, whoa, like, does this mean, do I even want to do this? Because this might mean I can't talk about politicians, right? But literally, after I saw Greg Locke and Steven Anderson, I was like, no, I'm doing this because that's exactly the point. It's to point out that they're doing it and they're getting away with it. And I'd be happy for you to tell me to stop doing that. Just go tell them the same thing, right?
You probably could say you're being discriminated against.
You could, exactly.
Because they didn't do it to all those other people who've been doing it for years. Why you?
Why me? And it's the same thing you said with the tax exemption. I would love for them to go and say, no, you guys can't be tax exempt anymore. Great. That's what we've been trying to say the whole time. Even the funny thing, like, somebody was explaining this to me. I think it was like No Name or Tux. Even the whole thing where we say like, oh, the flying man flied for your sins. And people go, whoa, you'd be crazy to believe that. Yes, that's the point of our religion. You're not supposed to believe it, right? Like, but yeah, that's the funny thing. It's like all these things that come up, you're like, yes, that's the point we're trying to point out. Like, they shouldn't be tax exempt. I'd be happy for again, guys, this is a pipe dream. We're talking about a real pipe dream. But how amazing would that be if there was a rash of atheist churches being founded and all of a sudden the Christians and the Muslims start going, no, we got to get rid of this tax exemption thing. We can't have these tax exempt atheist churches. I mean, we would just say, kill me now, I could die happy, right?
Right. I mean, it's the same way that Satanists have been doing it. They see Christians exploiting loopholes or testing the boundaries of law in public schools. So the Satanists step up and say, okay, well, we want the same rights. We want to distribute our literature to children, for example, and have special guest speakers from our church addressing children. But the Christians would go, okay, never mind. We'll stop if you don't push this. We'll stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's often effective, right? You think the next thing that's coming is the Satanist teacher who says, all right, students, we're going to do, all right, cool. Everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Hang on. Let me drop down the Satanist flash. All right, children, join me in my little Hail Satan first. We'll get to the Pledge of Allegiance. It's coming. Don't you worry, children. Just little Hail Satan first, right? Again, that prayer in schools thing would be probably over before it started, right? It'd be real quick.
Now, James, in your view, what makes an honorable Christian or any person of any faith? What sort of behavior would you say makes them especially honorable? Where we could look at that person and go, "Now, wait a second, look at what they're doing." That's really impressive.
Sure. So the guideline that I use is it relies heavily on non-hypocritical as a virtue. So don't be a hypocrite. If you apply a certain standard to other people, you have to apply it to yourself. If that's what they're doing, if they're speaking with other people as an equal, and they're not talking down to you, you're not some lost soul, you're not morally inferior, they're not the moral authority in the room, right? If they're speaking with you as an equal and not infringing upon you in any way, then that's, in terms of social interactions, that's where I say that's honorable, that's respectable, that's exactly where we need to be. Because no matter how right, two different people can both think that with two different moral opinions on a point, can both think that they have the morally superior opinion about that particular point, but they can still set that aside if they're mature people and speak with each other as equals, to where nobody tries to play any special card like I'm entitled to more respect for my opinion or my voice than you are. Mine should carry more weight than yours because I have a God behind me saying telling me to tell you these things.
I totally agree. Hang on one sec. Yeah, Scott, what do you think that I'm being dishonest about? I'm not quite sure. And yes, I do want eyes on my content. And if you want to know what my motivation is for that it's because people like MyOneBlack Friend give of their time and said, hey, Jay, we should do something. People like Scott Apperson say, hey, Jay, I'm down to do hot program. I have viewers in a growing community, and it's more fun and interactive for everybody if more people are involved. So yes, that is how you feed the YouTube algorithm. But yeah, there are very few things I am not willing to change my mind about. Matter of fact, if you check the stream I did last night on Pocket Locker and Jay Bundy, I was on with some right-wingers for hours, and they were just schooling me on international stuff, and I was over here Googling stuff. I mean, they taught me a ton of stuff. I actually thought that was great fun.
Sure.
But I want to come back to something you guys started with, and the real reason that this, like, when I first read the beginning of this blog post, James, it just was like a dagger to me. And the thing was, you talked about maturing, right? That phrase right there, people grow. I have this latent theory that that this is all, there's a maturity thing that happens, right? That like for some of us, you start growing intellectually, you start questioning things. And I think what you're getting at for other people here, it's not that you're saying they're immature or they never grew up, but that as they grow, there's these other vulnerabilities or maybe other things hooking them. And so we don't all go through this process the same way. But that's how I feel now, right? Like speak to that, because I think that's where you were going with this.
So there are many different kinds of maturity.
Right.
And so it's like a Christian can be quite mature when it comes to work ethic, for example. They can be the person that shows up every day, does their job, and really shines at it, because anything worth doing is worth doing right. So that's an example of a type of maturity they can very well have. But that's the reason why, as the blog continues, I list different sentiments that they express that are reflective of some very specific types of lacked maturity. And if to kind of spoil it a bit, a spoiler alert, to make a general point, what Christians say or what Muslims say when they're trying to get you to humor their worldview and their value system makes a whole lot more sense when you think of it in terms of an 8-year-old child who's trying to explain to you the relationship you're supposed to have with daddy. And so there are elements of their psychology that never outgrew the need to be parented, that never outgrew the need to be validated by someone other than themselves. Someone needs to set their boundaries for them. Somebody needs to tell them when they're doing a good job and kiss their boo-boos and pick them up and carry them when they can't carry through on their own. And so they're speaking to common human struggles that even atheists have.
Yes.
But the difference is that they're pushing a narrative that looks back to the old childish wiring that we all start in life with, is we don't have a choice. That is the dynamic we have with parents, because we don't understand the world yet. We have to defer to that authority.
Can't feed ourselves, can't use language yet. Right.
So within the context of actually being a child, that worldview makes perfect sense. It's absolutely necessary. But the problem is when we have these religious narratives that say, you know what, don't outgrow that wiring. Don't outgrow those needs, that way of looking at the world and relating to yourself and relating to others and relating to authority. Don't outgrow those things. Still feel like you need those things, because, then they'll tell you you're not qualified, and you'll never be qualified to govern your own life, to own your own life, to govern your own journey, that those things belong to daddy.
Yeah, my OneBlack Friend, I was just going to ask you to get in, and then maybe we could look at some more of this post. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. I want you to finish your point, James, there. Before I ask my question, was there a little more you wanted to add there?
That's it. That's it for now.
Okay. What you inspired me to ask is, how do you view, in light of what you just said, the different functions of a book like the Bible and the function of the God itself in the thinking of the religious mind?
So, Bible, starting with Genesis, they cast this fatherly figure through that child lens. But the bigger problem, and that's certainly a huge problem by itself, even if that father figure had been written to be really an ideal, healthy father, that would still be a problem. for people that are talked out of maturing beyond the need for it. But the second problem really comes with the fact that the Bible's God character, if you really think about it, checks off every single item on the list of narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy. Every single item on the list. Check. So what I think happened, I think that whoever wrote a lot of these stories in Genesis, that they themselves were a narcissist, severe one, that they had an estranged relationship with their children.
They want their way.
Yeah, and so they were projecting a values narrative that endorses their way of looking at the world and what they think should be the role of a child to the parent, a parent who had children for all the wrong reasons and who expects that their children should never outgrow them. And so they create this character, this God character, that exemplifies that same ideal and way of thinking and that type of relationship. So that what happens is that these religious narratives and these religious cultures, they seed the idea of this figure within the mind. They plant it in there and they help it grow. They help it become this larger living entity within the psyche. So they're basically hijacking a part of your brain where they grow this God figure. And it's unique for every person. But people don't realize that because they use the same language when they talk about who God is and what God wants and all that stuff. They use the same words, and it sounds like they're all saying the same thing, but they're not, because this figure that grows in the mind is unique to every person within whom it resides. Because yes, that's really what makes it personal, because it's built from their own personal life experiences, and that the way they associate different words and concepts and emotions and values, and it's built with those things as it grew up. And so it's natural to them, and he's real and he's alive, and they feel that connection. Well, of course they do. It's literally something that lives inside their own mind. Of course they feel it. Of course he's real, but they don't understand the way in which he's real versus not real.
Yeah.
And
I want to speak a little bit to this conversation that's happening in the chat, because you know we Rebecca comes up a lot, right? And I've been jumping around with Rebecca a lot. Even the night before we interviewed her, right? I was kind of raging, right? Because I found her second channel, the Examining Evolution channel, right? And I was all like, oh, you're going hardcore anti-evolution. You're interviewing all these intelligent design scientists. And I mean, I was raging. Like, this is not okay, Rebecca. We can't be friends if you're going to do this. Right? Sure. And then going in an interview the next day, I literally was outside walking my dog, and I was like, Jay, since you started this show, you have wanted to interview one person. There's been one theist at the top of your list, you know, and that person is Rebecca. And you've known from day one, before you even knew she had a channel, right? Because first I just saw her popping up on other atheist channels. I didn't know she had a channel. Before I knew she had a channel, I knew she was a young earth creationist. So is it really Rebecca acting out of character, or is Jason just being emotional? Right? Jason's being emotional to discovering something he should have already knew. If this person makes content, this is probably what it's going to look like. Right? I always say this. Theists are going to theist. Apologists going to apologize. And so I do go back and forth on how genuine is this person being, how honest is that person being. I think that that's probably a natural part of reacting to this. But look, I did the interview with her. She was absolutely wonderful. You could speak to this, my one black friend. She was super fun to deal with, cool as a cucumber, great broadcaster. And I feel like, to speak directly to the issue, one, I don't know if a person's always being honest and forthright, but I love this comment that as anti-theists, part of what we do is we figure out, you know, where we think they might be dishonest or how they're not taking the most honest position, what the motivations might be, and how we can address it. And you have to remember, from my perspective, none of this is honest. Right? So when I'm talking to my mother about religion, to me, she's taking an inherently dishonest position. When I'm talking to my grandmother about this, she is taking an inherently dishonest position. So, yeah, I just think that that's a fact of life, of how you're going to feel. But here's the flip side that we have to remember. They do the same thing with us, right? When I'm talking to my Christian and my theist friends, they think atheism is the worst idea you could possibly have and will literally condemn you to an eternity of suffering. I don't just believe in evolutionary biology. I spent 10 years in grad school studying evolutionary biology, and I'll spend the rest of my life underpaid as an evolutionary biologist. To most Christians, that is the most irrational, financially stupid, and ridiculous life decisions you can make, but they're still willing to talk to me, right? So just as crazy as we think they are, just as I heard a guy yesterday on Atheist say this on a stream. He said, you know, you got to be careful with these scientists, but you definitely cannot trust anything that is said by a scientist whose research is funded by the government, right? I popped up on the stream 3 minutes later. I was like, hi, I'm an evolutionary biologist whose research is paid for by the government, and all I do is indoctrinate children at the university with NSF money. Like, that's the world we live in. So I'm just saying, folks, like, they're giving us the same benefit of the doubt that we're giving them, and I just think it's all part of it, right?
Sure. Absolutely. You know, Rebecca went on Sal's channel the other night, and they went live, and I think it probably should have been a private conversation, because she was basically saying, well,
can I get an amen, Kenny?
Sorry. Yeah, can I get an amen? I love that so much. So he was schooling her. She's like, well, what if an evolutionist says that? And then Sal was like, well, say this. And a lot of it was conversation stoppers, and some of it was just appeals to authority and other logical fallacies. And you know, but he was trying to help her shortcut her way through the process because she doesn't understand the science, and she knows she doesn't. And I think that that's just foolish, even if they're correct. Even for the sake of argument, let's say evolution turned out to be false, just for the sake of argument.
Sure.
It's still silly for somebody who admittedly doesn't know enough about the science to start preparing to debate it on their channel. Like, come on, like, I'm on the evolution side of it. And once I get my channel going, I'm not going to debate with people about evolution because I'm not qualified. There's just so many people out there that are. Let them handle that one, and I'll stay in my own wheelhouse.
I'm going to be honest with you. I do evolutionary biology every day for a living, and I don't feel qualified to debate it, right? Because there's so much cellular stuff. There's so much molecular stuff. I got news for you guys. I just spent 10 years in grad school, and you know what it means to most of the people in my field? Jack shit, absolutely nothing. Why? Because everybody has a PhD, right? The last 10 years I spent in grad school, they spent that 10 years in the field, working, teaching, publishing papers, giving conference talks. So we're babies, right? If you just got your PhD in a field, I know to most of the world that makes you like a huge expert and you're qualified now. No. To most of the people in the field, that's like, oh, great. Well, look at you, new to the dance. Welcome. Here's your admission ticket. You can enter the park now. You've accomplished absolutely nothing. Right. It's a ticket to start working. You've earned nothing. So literally, right, for me, I'm like, no, why don't you get somebody who's been doing this for 20 years or 30 years? Why would you ask me? I just finished school, right? Like, it's like student Dr. Ben. He's like, I'm still a student, guys. I'm telling you all this, but I'm still a student, right? Like. The other thing I wanted to speak to about this, and I want to thank Lena because she brought this to my attention and helped me really think about it. Somebody like Rebecca has taken on a lot of personal risk. Like when she moved her content more to like being atheist friendly, that cost her a lot of her Christian viewership from what I hear and how I understand, even when she tells this story, right? So even to the point, because I'm with you. I think there's a lot of hubris involved in all this. How do you have the audacity to put up a whole channel opposing a science and then not genuinely study the science enough to learn it and understand it? I find that to just be dishonest and arrogant and all of that. But the flip side, when you are having these conversations and you are taking on both sides, even on the Examining Evolution channel, y'all, she will have evolutionary biologists on there, right, who are basically telling her she's wrong and explaining the evolutionary biology to her properly, right? So you got to give credit where credit is due. She is doing that. And again, it comes at tremendous risk. A lot of the apologists, especially the more fundamental ones, they would never make that type of content on their channel. Just saying.
James, I think you would agree. What we all learned from studying religion, the best way to keep them coming back is to get them angry.
That's true.
Alive. So for you, Pocket Locker, you're screwed. You're watching that channel forever.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna
Exactly.
be there forever.
Yeah.
She got you. She got you.
You guys want to read some more of this post? I think it's really great.
Well,
Go ahead.
I have a question. By the way, if you don't mind, James, I'm going to wait on my question. B.S. Lewis has a comment that I'd love for you to speak to, because maybe you have some insight on the B.S. Lewis situation. The comment says, "I'm married to a Christian, and that seems to give one a perspective that others who are free to shut doors on Christians' faces don't have." So, okay, so B.S. Lewis is in a marriage with a Christian, and can't just, I guess, when B.S. is hearing the opposing point of view, shall we say, B.S. just can't walk away. They have to stay there and be present. Could you talk to maybe how other people can navigate that, or even maybe some advice for B.S., how B.S. can navigate that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, he's speaking to the value of not being in an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And
amen. Amen.
It's not just Christians that do that. I see atheists do that all the time. They get sucked into the echo chamber, and they're not thinking beyond the parameters. They're not free to. And it's not that atheists are wrong about a lot of their arguments. Their arguments are solid, but I have seen some over-polarization where people are a bit too critical of believers and a bit too rigid about their interpretation of what's going on over there in the believer camps and in the believers' hearts and minds, etc. And yeah, absolutely, I think he's onto something, because it kind of reminds me of Spurlock. Was his name Mike or Matt Spurlock? He had an HBO special called 30 Days.
Oh, Morgan.
And Morgan Spurlock, that's what it was. Thank you. And what it was, he would take people who were polarized opposites in their worldviews and value system, and he'd have them live together for 30 days. But there was some oversight, so it didn't all go to hell and people, murdering each other or whatever. And at the end of the 30 days, what you would find is that people, that both sets of people that were put together had their views tempered by a greater understanding of the other person and the other culture, the other way of thinking, the other way of living. And he was really onto something, because I think that some implementation of that is going to be absolutely essential to humanity moving forward, because we've got to be able to have less polarized discussions and get to see each other as real people and understand that it's not as simple as it seems from a distance.
Yeah. I also go ahead.
Okay, thank you. How do you listen when you want to speak? Follow me. If the other person is so anxious to get out their point of view, and it's one that is just sort of, maybe they're trying to nicely tear us down, let's say, right? Sure. How do you listen when you want to speak?
I think that the first thing that happens is you need to depolarize the sentimentality, the mentality of the persons that are involved. If once they begin to see each other as relatable human beings, and where it's not a contest and your way of life isn't in jeopardy and they're not the enemy, once you ease into a different kind of energy between you and the other person, it becomes easier to be patient, and you begin to hear them out, and you begin to actually really hear what they're saying. Even if they're wrong, you begin to understand the nuances behind what they're thinking.
I'm gonna say, like, the other day I did a broadcast where I was criticizing genetically modified skeptic, right? Because he was talking about how he still loved Jesus, but he won't worship him, right? And I was being a complete hypocrite, because I was basically criticizing him for still being like culturally Christian and hanging on to his love of Christian culture and ideals or whatever. And I just want to say, first of all, hypocrisy is fun and part of the human experience. So I don't ever claim I'm not a hypocrite. I'll just tell you flat out when I'm being hypocritical. It's a good time. Also, sometimes I'm trying to be entertaining, right? And who cares? Like, I don't use my channel virtue signal, but not always. But
wasn't that virtue signal?
Yeah, it was virtues. I was gonna say whatever.
Right
but, yeah. Again, hypocrisy is fun, my one black friend. It's fun. Do as I say, not as I do. But part of what I want to speak to is my love of being a part of a church as an atheist. And part of what I think you're speaking to about being in this marriage is part of what I love about that is I believe if I want to talk to people about my atheism and I want to share my lack of faith with them and I want to influence with them, if I'm being a genuine person trying to be a little bit less hypocritical, I should let them influence me. And so one of the things I love about being an atheist worship drummer is it constantly gives people a chance to evangelize me. And I think that's perfect. Because again, if I want to talk to you about evolution or point out little holes in the gospel, then why can't I let them tell me about the love of Jesus or why atheism is going to lead me to hell or why, you know, this is all God working in my life so he could bring me to greater utility in his kingdom? Lay it on me, you know? And I think a lot of us in this community, like, you got to accept that. You're out here trying to have this conversation. Don't make it a one-way conversation. And so I think being in that marriage like makes you sharp the same way I think it does for Doug and people like that, because you see the other side as human. You learn how to work through things. And so I've learned that even last night when I'm talking about being with these conservative guys, I mean this seriously. Like, it was super fun because I love range. I love being dynamic. I love giving you a little bit of different, right? So we spent a couple hours just having fun with the Trump rally, goofing off. You know, lock her up, lock her up. That's always what we're looking for when we do the Trump rally, right? But when I talked to these guys later, it was like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. These dudes were telling me about the crisis with diesel and the shortages and how the economic sanctions that we're levying against Russia are complicating the world's economic stage and, you know, dangling us on this knife edge of another world war. And YouTube Punk is like sending me links. Yeah, YouTube Punk DEF. They were sending me links. I was having to look stuff up and being like, hey guys, this is really informative. But here's my point. How the heck can we influence them if we're not willing to listen and be influenced? So I loved it because all of this culture war stuff, all of this, let's fight about CRT and Roe v. Wade and, them transgendering your kids, like a lot of that is masking and it's covering up these other real nuanced differences of opinion we have about substantive issues that aren't actually all one way or the other. We can actually learn a lot from each other. And I recognize these dudes are not ignorant. They're well-read. They're well-studied. And they're actually citizens of the world. They might lean a little MAGA. You know, they might think no matter how bad Trump is, Joe Biden's worse. But you know what? I had to really respect them. And I got news for you guys as a proper scholar. I'm lazy. What do I mean by that? I do one type of research, the type you pay me to do, evolutionary biology. What do these people do? They go do their jobs as whatever the fuck they do for a living, and then they come home and they do scholarship in their spare time. You know, they're studying and they're reading the books and they're staying up on I'm not doing any of that. So honestly, respect, right? Like, respect to you for working hard in your spare time to stay up on what's going in the world and then welcome a little liberal snowflake like me onto your channel and school me. Like, we got to give each other that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, James, how would you say in the... going back to your blog, but riffing off what Pocket Locker just said, what is the best way to be an active listener and make the difficult conversations between the believer and the non-believer a win for both? Where even let's turn the wick up on this. Even a hostile non-believer, even a hostile believer, is there a way to win that conversation?
Well, you have to disarm the spirit of hostility first. Mm-hmm. You have to reframe the conversation so that it's not such that their ego is riding on it, is being bet on it. Like,
powerful.
If they feel like that's like who they are or the value of who they are is under attack, if they feel like that's what's being questioned, then anything you say is going to be seen in that light. So you have to make sure that you convey and make sure that within yourself you actually are coming at it genuinely from the perspective of you just want to understand them, and in an exchange you're hoping that they could better understand you. And if that's the narrative, and if that's the way that we phrase every sentence that then flows from our mouth in the discussion, and make sure that our tone, if it's an audible discussion, matches that spirit of things, we can bring them back down to just, to have a more civil discussion.
I'm inspired to ask you, and this may be a question we should ask believers when we speak to them in the future. What do we, I left religion, what did I lose when I left?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, yeah. Or more importantly, that, and what do you think the average person that you've encountered would say I lost?
See, it's interesting that you ask me that, because on one hand, I'm remembering when Penn Jillette said that the reason he doesn't, if he could have some ironclad argument that would always convert a theist every time into atheism, he wouldn't be afraid to use that argument, because he wouldn't want the responsibility of pulling that rug out from underneath them. Because what if they needed it? What if they weren't ready for that awakening, and it just threw them into chaos and existential crisis and depression? And in theory, that could happen. But at the same time, every deconverted atheist that I've ever encountered, beyond like a 2-year window of adjustment, has been glad for the deconversion. There's often a time where they regret it. They wish they could, almost like going back into the womb.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. But eventually they get past that. And when they do, they begin to take ownership of their own life, their journey, their feelings, their sexuality, everything else, and without undue shame. And it's so liberating and so empowering, especially if they're connected with the community, which is, again, very important, like you were saying. So they don't feel like they're all alone in the fight, right? They end up on the other side of it, and it becomes restorative, it becomes healing, it becomes empowering. But there's that window of time where they can't see that light at the end of the tunnel, and they just aren't sure how to make sense of life or make sense of themselves. And that's a turbulent period of time for some people. So the question is there ever somebody who deconverts, who ends up perpetually regretting it and never recovers? I don't know. And if I knew for sure, that would empower me to give you a much more comprehensive answer.
Here's a slightly different question, and then I want to get to Cameron's comment. Do you think, I agree with you. I actually think part of the reason I'm more committed to ever to actively say, hey, I'm totally down to deconvert people, right? And I think it's a good idea to do so, is because I really do believe there's like this freedom and this celebration, and it's a lot of benefits. So I don't know anybody that regrets it perpetually. But do you think that underlying there's that fear, right? That there's like, even for people who are questioning, that there's this fear that if I follow through on this questioning, I'll end up somewhere I regret.
Sure. I mean, it's one of the biggest reasons they won't question it. They won't, they do these thought stopping exercises and these conversation stopping exercises, and they throw up mental barriers to stop you from getting through, specifically because they're worried about that and they don't want to risk it.
Are there, if we notice we're falling into a conversation that's that,
oh wait, that's the stream key.
You're wrong because you don't believe, that sort of thing, with the believer, what are some things we can do to sort of set the stage? I feel like I'm re-asking a question that you answered beautifully a moment ago. I guess, would you say we're better off for having the conversation, or just politely stating, I realize this may be very important to you, but it's nothing I want to discuss?
So for me, I always want to discuss it. Like,
me
I have
too.
to be, yeah.
Not everyone will, though.
Sure. So, I mean, I would encourage anybody who's not familiar with it to go research the Socratic method. If you can be more question focused than statement focused, and if you can get people to ask themselves the important questions that they never really thought about before, they didn't think through fully before, they might surprise themselves with coming up with with questions and interest that they didn't have before.
Sorry, guys. I accidentally dropped the stream key, but the link I just dropped, the studio.restream.io, guest, all that, blah, blah, blah. That's the call-in link if you guys want to call in and talk to James. We like to make sure we have a good period of time to, interview our guest ourselves. But I want to open it up if you guys want to join the conversation. Go ahead, James. Didn't mean to cut you off. Just wanted to mention that.
I mean, that's my answer for now, but if you want to.
Okay. Also, I wanted to get to Cameron's comment. He said we needed James during the stream with Christians the other night, which was we joined in with some boisterous Christians who wanted to speak to us. But yeah, man, I wanted to say, I definitely love having you, and I'd love for you to, have a more formal role in the community here and what we're doing. I definitely try to elevate people to. We kind of call our mods ushers, and then they move into deacons. But we'd love to have you, and so maybe we'll chat in Discord after this and see where things go. But I've always enjoyed our conversations, and I do think you would have been helpful because I like the fact that there's a diversity of atheists, right? And we've got some people that are really in your face, and some other people that are really friendly. We've got MyOneBlack Friend, our resident. There's always that one guy in a crew who's way too nice. But no, that's it's really helpful. For all the panel, though, Cameron also asked, do y'all think having these convos with Rebecca has any benefit, and why? I'll start by saying I often got to a place where I thought they were going nowhere, and I started to get frustrated. And part of that was I realized the sort of treasure of education. And what I mean by that is I have seen students start at a place that I think I could call Rebecca-like in their mentality, sort of the college version of it. They're actively in a church and they're part of a worship group or whatever, and they come in my class and they're on evolution, right? But you hear as part of the curriculum. And when they come out, they're enthused about evolution, probably still in their church, but they really got it now. They're definitely not anti-evolution, and they're just off to the races, and I love it. And it's the difference that 15 weeks with me and Rob has made in their life, right? And what I see with a lot of these content creators is you got world-class experts just on your channel for month in and month out. Okay, Rebecca, let me walk you through the fossil record now. Let's talk about geology, right? You've got Rebecca, Gutsick Gibbon, and all the philosophers and all that. And it seems like for these people, it's just going in one ear and out the other. And then they go, well, I've had the scientist on, I've heard them out, I'm totally unconvinced, but thanks for showing up. Drop your super chats below. See you later. And I was just like, this is ridiculous, right? And it's because you're wasting that education. People would kill to have an opportunity to get educated by these people, and they are giving you one-on-one private tutoring in public, benefits of comment section and all of this, and y'all don't care. But I also realized, just like I think Doug, if you saw his debate with Trent Horn, the brilliant thing he did was he talked past Trent Horn and used it as an opportunity to talk to Trent Horn's audience who might be new. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is sometimes you're trying to get a pebble up a hill. And that's maybe what my students are. They're in learning mode. They're about to go to med school. They're really quick studies, right? And so they're like getting a pebble up a hill. You can actually just take it. Few weeks with me and Rob, we just chuck it on up the hill and it's easy, right? Other times you're trying to push a fucking boulder up a hill. And it takes a lot longer to push that boulder up the hill. And actually, you know what? I can't push it up by myself. You know what? Maybe even me and Rob can't get it up himself either. Maybe it takes a village to raise this child, right? And maybe it's just going to take a decade to get her up that hill as opposed to 10 weeks. I don't know, but that's my take. What do you guys think?
Sure.
James, you want to go ahead and take it?
Well, I mean, all we can do is plant seeds, and try to nurture them along the way. Whatever grows, grows. We have to accept our limits, make peace with our limits, and make peace with the people whose limits frustrate us. Just to let it be, because it's all physics at the end of the day, and they're just, everybody's journey is their own. They are where they are. They're making as much sense of it as they can. Whatever's in the way is just in the way. All we can do is offer whatever help that we have, and some people will make a lot of use of that and some people won't, and that's just the way that it is.
Mm-hmm. I guess for myself, Cameron, the thing why it's beneficial, I've learned in my life that I'm unexpectedly a teacher at times. And I've seen how valuable that has been to literally hundreds of people. And knowing that, a chance to talk to Rebecca and people like Rebecca, I value it greatly, because there's a person, and she may see it the same way as I do. And in fact, a lot of people may. Here's a person who doesn't understand things in the way that I understand them. They may be missing a piece of knowledge that I have. I may be missing knowledge that they have. If we fail to have that conversation in a civil way, we may not ever be able to help each other along. If we can have that conversation in a civil way, we can grow.
Sure.
As James has pointed out, we can maintain our disagreement. We can walk away with that still. But at least we have something more. James, I don't know if you saw the interview with Rebecca that we did, but I had a question about, hey, and for the benefit of anyone else who didn't see it, I had asked her about if she had a time machine and she can go back and see Jesus, and they could understand each other. What are some, I think I phrased it as, what would you ask him to say? Like, make sure you comment on this. And she made a comment about, I know what I wouldn't want him to say. There was something she didn't want him to say. And it was about how you should sell your cloak and go and buy a sword. Now, I have a lot of fun with this Bible. I point because I have it on my screen here. I have a lot of fun with it because it's a target-rich environment, as one movie put it, about women, though. But I explained to her that's not a bad thing that he says that. And I went on to explain its origins are in the Old Testament. And the reason why he's telling that person to sell your cloak and buy a sword is it's part of the Passover ritual, that you're supposed to gird yourself. You're supposed to put on a sword, right? As part of the ritual, where he is telling these people they've gathered for the benefit of their salvation, not to beat up on somebody, not to defend him by using a metal sword or something like that, but to gather and save themselves from perishing in the second death, that sort of thing. There's the value.
This is Jesus, the minister of the ritual, not Jesus, the warrior prince.
Yeah, not the guy in Revelation who's coming back to beat up on me and the fellow non-believers.
Right.
But yeah, the meek and mild Jesus with a fairly good point about his mission, right? He's being about his mission. And so,
and you don't even believe Jesus existed.
No, he didn't exist. But for her, because her faith is what dear to her, and I'm putting forth, I'm literally giving her back her faith. Here, you thought there was a blemish on it. No. Let me polish that for you and explain to you what you truly had in that one aspect. It may be later that some other opinions I have are now worth listening to, because she can fact check me. She can go back in the Old Testament and see it's exactly what I said it was.
And she trusts you. She knows you're not looking to strawman the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely not. Believe me, I could never do a better job. To itself. Fantastic. So it's to me, it's comedy more than it's poetry, quite honestly.
Well, sure, even in a moment, an atheist defending Jesus to a Christian is itself funny.
And so it is.
Yeah. I want to get to something Cameron had asked, which is, do we feel the same way about other Christians? And he had mentioned some names in particular, Darth Dawkins, Rob, Kenny. And I'm just going to say for myself, there's a number of different motivations. So some of these things, I want to check stuff off my bucket list. As a YouTuber in this community, Darth Dawkins is a known entity. I personally think he's a jerk. My conversations with him, I imagine it would be very different than a lot of other people. But here's the thing. It's Darth Dawkins, right? And I happen to have a colleague named Cliff who I'm going to start doing broadcasts with. I should be streaming with Cliff tomorrow afternoon. He's the developer of the digital evolution software I use called Mabe. But he also is into this community. I didn't know this is one of those things you realize you have a mutual kind of interest with a colleague, right? And so he watches Darth Dawkins. He can't stand Darth Dawkins, right? So if I get an invitation to debate or have a conversation with Darth Dawkins, I'm taking it every time. Because it's an opportunity to grow my community and my channel that I just can't afford to say no to. And if I can bring Cliff with me, and then him and I can show up the next Monday and I can kick back and we can talk about the conversation Cliff actually had with Darth Dawkins. Like, as a buddy, I'm checking that off. I was a good buddy today, and we and Cliff just did something that was fun, right? Is Cliff going to end up just in a shouting match with Darth Dawkins? It's going to be a complete dumpster fire, and it's not going to be productive at all? Absolutely, but it's Darth Dawkins, right? When you have somebody like Kenny, I don't think Kenny's one of those guys who, pretends to be some kind of super apologist or whatever, but I know he's got a YouTube channel. At the same time, I find Kenny to just be a kind of honest, genuine guy. I think he's a good conversation. I think he's fun. I think he's willing to play along. I jumped on with the other night and I gave him, 3 or 4, can I get amen, Kenny? And every time he gave me an amen and laughed with me. Hey, Kenny's good in my book. And I want to interview, like Mike, I jumped on just to get his email just so I could get him on Hot Program, right? And so I could do something with Kenny, because I think his perspective very much represents a lot of Christians. And when you talk to Kenny, to me, you're talking to a real Christian. And what I mean is my background as a believer, which that means like you're not a Sunday Christian. You're what I call a every single Monday through Saturday Christian. You go to the church. The church is a huge part of your life. Church people are a huge part of. Look, for a lot of you guys that, you believe in Jesus in private and you read the Bible on your own and you pray to God in your room, look, you are a real Christian, okay? That's just not the type of folks I grew up with. You see what I'm saying? So Kenny's that's thing. Rob, I don't care about being productive. Sometimes I just need, some stuff is for me and my mental health and for my community and my friends. You guys are my friends. I love you. I just need to keep it real with you. Rob is my least favorite content creator on the internet. What I'm about to say is very serious. You should never say what I'm about to say to a content creator. It's the meanest thing you could ever say to somebody, and it's awful. But I think Rob should delete his channel. I literally am so angry about the time I've spent listening to Rob bore me and look up obscure cherry-pick citations. I want him to delete his channel. Now, is that nice of me or productive or in any shape or way going to lead to anything productive in the world? Absolutely not, but it's just how I feel about Rob. I'm going to let you guys take it over from here.
I mean, we're talking about the same Rob I clash with, right? That same Rob.
Yeah. What's the name of his channel? So people know which channel they should never watch. You got to warn them. Put this on your blacklist of channels. I don't even know the name of it.
You'll be a viewer forever. He's got you angry, so he's got you.
Oh, I don't watch. No, you can't. You can't. It'll put you to sleep. He's that bad. He can't create good content. But go ahead.
Go ahead, James.
Oh yeah, go ahead, James.
So I mean, in the comments section on Rebecca's channel,
Sentinel.
What is it?
Sentinel something. Sentinel Apologetics. Oh, put it on your to be deleted list.
Sure. So I did a walkthrough on her channel as a comment about a bunch of different stunts that Rob pulls in these debates and discussions. And like almost everything he says is just a stunt. He's just trying to cheat his way to a sense of victory while overprotecting his ego the entire time. And it's so unproductive. I'm not saying that I'm trying to summarize the whole of who he is.
Right.
Because I'm not. I don't know the whole of who he is. But in that context, his behaviors are certainly not admirable.
So is Rob the guy who sort of sounds like this?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you know what we're talking about.
Okay, I know who you're talking
Oh
about.
my goodness.
I heard a little bit of him the other day. And can you tell me, does he constantly reinforce the idea?
Also,
that
my one black friend, you're no longer allowed to do Rob impressions. Because
Was it
literally,
you
no,
to
because
do
your
Rob
impression of
impressions?
him was actually so much more entertaining than he is that it's too much of a compliment. So no more Rob impressions.
Okay. It's like
Yeah, because you're
Alan
making
Parr.
him
It's the same with Alan Parr.
seem better than he is. Yeah. Don't do that.
I shall not shine a light where darkness prevails.
Exactly.
I think Rob, in the bit that I heard him, he seemed to lean too much on the idea of the Magi being a very good reason to buy into the entire Jesus narrative. I think there's some things there he ought to know. He and I haven't had a conversation, but I think it's more plain than it is miraculous. It's actually very simple. Once you realize what a star is, that a star is an angel, is a messenger, it's the same thing. Yes, a star can mean a star in the sky, but often back then they might have interpreted a planet as a star. But, I think he relies too much on that. There are things he doesn't know that could kind of disabuse him of that opinion. But as you've stated here, James, in your blog, there are reasons people keep those opinions. There are reasons they hold on, even when they know they're wrong. So I think the value of being corrected, be it me or someone who is a believer, I think should be appreciated. To have someone care for you enough, even if you're a stranger, to sort of put you on the right understanding is very valuable, because even if you still disagree, at least you understand a little bit more, and maybe you can even make a better argument, regardless of which side you're on.
Yeah. Also, I just feel too, just make content. Just make content and tell us what you think.
That's what Rob is doing.
What I think, but here's what I think a lot of people do. They draw attention to their weaknesses in a certain way, right? If my name was Pocket Locker, and then I had this thing in my bot where you could, hang on a second, let me show you guys so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I could do this name thing, right? And the bot will tell you this is what my name means, and it'll show you it's a drumming reference, right? If I did that and then I was just absolutely awful at drumming, right? Y'all would be like, just call your channel J Bundy maybe, or just interesting science guy talks, right? So my point is, when you draw and all you talk about is, look how good I am as a scholar. Well, these people don't know what they're talking about because they don't understand the proper scholarship. They're not as scholastically sophisticated as I am. And then you just cherry pick scholarship from the worst journals and you do really bad scholar. People like me just sit back and go, well, man, this is just really bad scholarship, and you didn't have to draw my attention to how particularly awful your scholarship is by bragging about how brilliant you are all the time, right? And that's what drives me. I realize, and I want to compare it to somebody like Richard Madsen, right, who I kind of thought was like an atheist maybe or something like that when I first heard of him, and then I listened to his channel and I realized he's kind of not. I think he's a theist, and he's got some really interesting ideas. I think they're kind of out there. I don't really believe them much, right? I don't know. So we probably disagree about a whole lot, but he's super friendly, really charismatic. You love having him in your chat. I hope he comes on. I'd love to have him on our program. And if you watch his channel, he's engaging, he's interesting, he's fun to talk to. You're like, go Richard Madsen. I'm all about this guy. Rob is dry, boring. Every time, James, you ask him a question, he goes, hang on a sec. And he sits there and types away for 4 minutes while he looks up a ref. Right? It's just it's just the worst to me. Just really bad.
Sure. Now, in Rob's, one thing I will say for Rob is that I think he is smart. I think he's so smart that he outsmarts himself. And I've said this before. It's the idea of finding patterns where there aren't any, finding meaning where there isn't any, which really underpins the Jewish mysticism, like Kabbalah and numerology and things like that. So these people are so clever that they're looking for things that other people won't notice in order to prove how clever they are. And of course, when you're looking for a pattern, a correlative pattern, you'll find one, even if it's not there. And that's what he does. And he doesn't realize he's found something that isn't there. So he's smart, but he's smart in ways that he outsmarts himself. And I find it mildly amusing, but he's also, very frustrating to do.
Now, James, I heard you in an interview with Otangelo, or maybe it was a debate. Maybe it was, I don't know. You'll remember if it was.
I was on Otangelo's channel once.
Okay. And you mentioned, you made a comment about the possible correlation maybe between being a drummer as a youth and intelligence. Do you recall that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Were you a drummer as well?
When I was younger, I was.
That's great. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. There we go.
That's all three of us.
Really? Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. I've been thinking about getting back into that lately. I really have been.
I think you should do it. Do it. Everybody should play drums. I don't know. It's just my motto. Do it, James. Just do it. Yeah. You know how this is. I always joke. Everybody wants to be a drummer, but nobody wants to play drums. Right? Because it's like, you love the idea of being on stage and rocking out or whatever, but the difference between is that guy plays drums. He's at home just practicing and playing drums. So just do it. I'm going to just keep bothering you till you tell me you're drumming again.
You do that. I want you to. That's
okay.
Awesome. That works.
Definitely. You too, my one black friend. You need to, because look, my dad used to be a drummer, and I realized what I'm going to have to do is make a bunch of money, enough that I can buy him a really nice drum set. I'm going to have to get it for him for Christmas, put it in his home, set it up, and then guilt trip him until he feels awful about not using it and actually sits down at the thing and makes me a video.
I should have done the same thing. My dad was a drummer when I was a kid and when I was little, and he didn't stick with it either. And I always knew that he was missing something. I always knew he should have went back to it. And I should have bought him a set. I should have bought him a set and did exactly what you just said. I wish I had. Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, as soon as it's in the budget. But yeah, actually, I appreciate the encouragement. Thank you. But yeah, it's a lot to take in, and I think music is great, and I also think there's something to the discipline. Like it teaches you how to just it sort of undermines magical thinking in its own way, right? Everything starts from nothing. You've got to learn the patterns and sit there and focus on the stickings and the balance and the coordination and all of that it takes to even play a song. You realize, there's no magic in this at all. It was just me in that room and my goofy limbs trying to get it right. And then there's another layer to it. And the World Science Festival had a whole series on this a few years ago where they had these tests where they would have primates, monkeys, apes, different kinds of primates, exposed to certain kinds of beat patterns. And then they eventually had them work manually with little visual and physical puzzles. And they found that the primates that were exposed to certain kinds of beat patterns with drums became more intelligent over time. They aren't 100% understanding exactly how that works yet. Yeah, because it's not drums, right? There can't be there's no, and this kind of shows that, right? There's all this different phenomenon that is doing something in the brain, and drumming activates it, right? Yeah. Right.
Actually, I think that might be it.
Yeah.
I think the different certain types of cadences, James, I think they get your mind sort of unfocused on things that would be distractions.
Right.
And so the things that you're supposed to focus on become easy. Would you look at these tribal cultures like in, I don't know, Central America, South America, Asia, Africa, when they get together and have some festival, what are they doing? They're drumming. Mm-hmm. And then people sort of get lost in it. And it's like a trans-like thing.
Yes.
Trans-like thing.
Right.
For them. And then whatever, the celebration continues in there. That's very
I love it.
Going back to say the basics. Because you're enculturated as a small child. You're going to be part of that one day. Part of that dancing and all that stuff. And so you'll focus on it and you'll learn it. But I think you probably could play it for students. Some things they'll get lost in how the drums sound. And what do you see a lot of kids doing? They're doing this, or they're playing air guitar, You don't see many air singers, I guess.
I'll tell you guys, for me, like, it started at the church, right? And my grandfather now happens to be the pastor of the church that, but he wasn't. He was the assistant pastor. And for me, it was like, it used to be wall to wall, people in the cathedral, and everybody was just rocking out with the drummer. And there was always like, that's where the kids wanted to sit. And so I would sit in the front, like the very front pew, like right by the drum, so I could just front row seat see the whole thing. And eventually what they do is they give you like a cowbell or something, right? And then you're like that annoying kid in church who's like jamming along to the drummer with the cowbell and stuff like that. And they start showing you stuff, which is why when I played at drums, anytime I'd see a kid there, I'd always encourage them or give them something to do, because you always want to encourage the next ones. But to your point about how you're tuning out things that would otherwise distract you, the best part to me about performing live is that I go into a battle mentality. Actually, there's like this audience and there's lights and there's all of these things going on around you, but you have to tune that out. And the band is relying on you, because if you make a mistake, there are real consequences. Everybody hears it. There's no secrets. We're live. Everything's exposed, right? And so you and the band are in your secret world. You're cueing in. You've got your guide track. You've got your click track. That click track is really the master, right? Because it's the absolute time. And all I'm doing is playing along to that click track. And my number one job is like, just like a commander in a battlefield, I'm trying to get my band through this gig safely, which means there's girls screaming, people jumping around. My job is to tune all of that out, listen to the click in the guide, and we've got to get from the beginning of the song to the end of the song safely without something blowing up and somebody dying, just like we practiced it, and then it's on to the next one. And the goal of this gig is to do that for 5 songs safely, and then we're on to the next one, right?
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the Mad Max movies, the more recent one, where they have the heavy metal guitarist up on the pole attached to one of the big dune buggies. They're going through the desert, and he's jamming out to hard rock and there's fire all over the place. Do you remember that from the movie?
I haven't really seen it, but that's awesome. But that's very much what it feels like.
Battle. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's. What else do you guys want to chat about? We've still got a little bit of time here. I want to make sure. Just what kind of questions do you guys have for James? One thing I want to touch on is, James, tell me about your origin story in this community. Give us the quick rundown of your background, and then how you ended up, let's say, active in this community, and then also what your aspirations are going forward.
All right. So growing up, my mom religion hopped a lot. Because she had this idea that Bible God is true, but where does Bible God want her? What church? What denomination? Things like that. So she was going through that, and I remember it quite well. Now, she ended up settling on Jehovah's Witnesses for the longest time, most of my childhood, and they made it the most brutal form of it possible, because my stepdad was a severe narcissist himself, and so he turned it into his own little cult with a Jehovah's Witness theme. So he made it worse than it had to be. But, I mean, it would have been bad anyways. And it took me many, many years to realize why my mom became religious and why she stayed religious. Her father was a larger-than-life figure, and she always felt like she needed to win his approval and his validation. And he catered to that. He intentionally sculpted her psychology that way because he liked being adored, and he liked her hinging her sense of worth on his approval. He liked it. He found it useful. And so when she ended up getting pregnant with me, she was only 14. She was 15 when she had me. And so she ruined their plans. She betrayed God. She let them down. And so they forced her to have kind of a shotgun wedding with my 18-year-old father, 19-year-old father, whatever he was at the time.
What plan did she ruin?
She ruined their plan. Now they were conservative Catholics, and they just kept having kids. And the idea was to maintain their blue-collar lifestyle, and then each child would help raise the next child, and then raise the next, like the Duggars.
Okay.
So she ruined that for them. Now their plans were screwed, and they didn't forgive her for that. And she felt so shamed and so hollowed out by not just losing her father's approval, but with this idea that she could never get it back. And she went through the rest of her life trying to find a surrogate father whose approval she could have. And
Oh my
she tried
goodness.
to an extent to find that in abusive, heavy-handed men who were, of course. Abusive. But also, God was this ultra super surrogate who's, if she could earn his approval, that would last, that would endure, and then she could be a good little girl. She could heal that sense of emptiness that her father left from withdrawing his approval from her. And I didn't understand that for the longest time. And so that's really what hooked her into Christianity, and it's something she never outgrew. I tried to help her, and I just couldn't, and eventually admitted I just couldn't. But she raised me to help make up the difference for her. But I'm sure you've heard different statements, different phrases like unconditional love and long suffering and things like that. They sound so noble. They sound so enlightened.
Yes, but it's the invitation to abuse. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. You already know where I'm going with that. So I grew up with this idea that she had this emptiness inside her, with a void she couldn't fill, and I would be this endless wellspring of give. And then she would have this sort of daily healing. And she also took it further than that. She said, look, if you're nice to somebody and they're nice to you back, you're kind of getting paid for your kindness. But if you're nice to somebody and they're not nice to you back, that's true altruism. That's true selflessness. That's what Jesus taught, she said. Now, I'm not going to argue whether or not Jesus taught that or not, but this is the narrative that she gave me. And so I went through my life dating some really abusive women over the years without realizing I was just repeating the pattern that I had with my mother.
Amen. Hallelujah. Yeah, I feel a testimony up in here. Go ahead, James.
So go ahead, give your testimony. I want to hear it.
Oh no, I can't. We don't have time, James. We don't have time. But let's just say a whole lot of what you just said.
Yeah. So that's where I was at. So eventually, I stopped dating abusive women, but the last one I dated, another narcissist. She's what actually helped me understand Christianity better, because I recognized all the correlations of behaviors and the values and the narratives and the way they try to tell you who you are. They try to tell you who you are because they need to crutch your sense of identity and your sense of worth on their validation. And I kept over-giving to these women that were takers, thinking that made me noble.
All right, James, testimony. So I see what you did there. You were like, I'm gonna get this testimony out of him. All right, yeah. I'm gonna just give you one of them. The last abusive girl I dated, I ended up telling her she shouldn't date black men. And the reason I did that was because of exactly what you just said. She would not stop going on about how great it was to date such an independent and great black man who was a scholar and had a PhD and did all these things, and I constantly needed to be celebrated. And I was like, damn, ain't nobody ever really say it to me like that. And what I realized was exactly what you said. For the most part, if you were to just date me and be like, oh, you know what, Jay, I realize there's so much great about you, but you're literally crazy as a motherfucker, so I'm out. I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's pretty much what happened, right? But when you build me up in this particular way that I hadn't been built up, and then you leave me and then you make me feel like crap, I'm like, whoa, you can't be doing that. Like, that's crazy, because I was like, that's so hurtful. That's so toxic. And in a world where it's literally hard to survive as being black, to like build me up as a black person and then completely undermine the identity that you just built up and the independence that it takes to actually do that, specifically by like pressing on that particular sensitivity. Oh, she did a number on me. Go ahead, Jay. I'm done. All right, you got that out of me, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I hear you. And so it was a very painful growing experience for me to recognize that in the end, I was complicit in my own abuse. I lent myself to it. And I did so for these ideals that weren't as well thought out as I thought that they were. But they are ideals that are prevalent in Christianity. And then I realized just how messed up Christianity is, because it tries to do all those same things. It tries to crutch your sense of worth, your value, your identity on a narrative that they control. And so it creates a certain kind of vulnerability that they exploit. And then I realized I can't keep doing that. I've got to grow in these ways that make me identity independent, that make me autonomous in that way. And not to the point where I never care what anybody thinks, because we are social creatures. I don't want to like pretend that I've ascended beyond all considerations of what anybody thinks. There's still some subtle influence there. I still have reasons, practical reasons to, in some settings, in some contexts, care what somebody thinks.
Mhm.
But it's within a much healthier limit now. I don't crutch my sense of who I am and what I'm worth on somebody else's opinions or their narrative. I consider what people say, and sometimes people are right. They'll call me out on my bullshit, and I'll be like, "Damn, they're right. Like, that was my bullshit. I need to own that shit." So they're not out. You know, that's why I listen, because if I get into this mental state where nobody has any influence at all, where nobody has any input at all, then I'll just be stuck. I won't be able to grow from other people's input and from, you know, because people can notice things about us that we don't notice about ourselves. So I need that input to come in. You know, call me on my bullshit, please, because if it's real, then I want to notice it so that I can grow past it. So a lot of hard lessons, so much pain and confusion. You know, I came out on the other end of it, and I think I'm stronger.
So tell me how you. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I got a question about this. So let's say we know someone who is immersing themselves into the Christian religion. I could acknowledge, having been there, that it is essentially asking you, as many religions do, it's asking you to lose yourself in order to become the best version of you that you can be. You Christians listening may recall the story of the rich young ruler, where Jesus says, if you would be perfect, sell all you have and give the money to the poor. And the guy just sort of walks off, and we don't know that he ever did it. I don't think it says that he ever did it. Why? He found some pleasure or identity in those things. Also, that the sacrifice was to be perfect. And you could essentially become a martyr for the Christian religion if you were following Jesus. It could cost you your life, which would make you a sacrifice. So the sacrifice is to be without blemish or defect. So anyway, all that to say, so if we know somebody who is immersing themselves and we see them not becoming a better person, but sort of becoming maybe the worst they can be rather than the best that they can be, what's a great way to intercede and maybe offer a course correction, whether you speak the language of the Bible or not? You know, whether you, like, I could throw out scriptures for pretty much any argument that you need to give someone. But what about someone who can't? What's the best way to gently approach that friend or family member and offer them correction? And actually, maybe it's a better question. What do you wish you had advice from a friend when you were really going through that and suffering with those women? What do you wish you had?
Right. So I wish I would have had a mentor, a father figure or a trusted friend or somebody, because I was really alone in the world for all of my journey. I've never really had somebody that had my back. And so I had to like learn the hard way all the things that needed to be learned. So, you know, so much pain could have been avoided if I just would have had a really sober, mature person in my world saying, well, okay, I get where you're at, but have you considered, you know, that this might be this way, or that you might be better off that way, or that your worth and value are here instead of over here? Have you considered that? And I would have listened. I would have taken it to heart. I would have wrestled with it. But I didn't have that. So if there was any one advice that somebody could have given me in that position that would have made the world of difference, it would have been to recognize my worth, to understand that my worth does not come from other people's opinions of me, that my worthiness to exist, my worthiness to be seen and heard and respected, and, you know, all these things, that they are not dependent upon somebody else's story, somebody else's narrative, somebody else's authority, somebody else's opinion. If they could have helped me understand that nobility is character, nobility, and it can be seen in sacrifice, but not wasteful sacrifice to people that don't appreciate it. If they could have helped me understand the need for balance, if the ocean quits giving up its water to the sky, or if the sky quits raining down its water back to the ocean, both will die. There is a balance that's required between systems in any ecosystem, including a social ecosystem, that is absolutely essential. If one organism over-sacrifices its own interests out of a sense of misguided, disproportionate admiration for some other organism in the system, the organism itself will begin to die. As that organism begins to falter in its ability to function in a healthy way, the larger ecosystem that it was trying to help begins to suffer as a result of the loss. So
this is so amazing.
Beautiful answer.
Yeah, really wonderful. And there's so much here to touch on. One thing I wanted to ask you is, do you think then, because I feel like it's immoral to command someone to love their enemy. Like it took me a long time to figure that out, but once I really started that, I was like, wow, like that's right there. But I think that's terrible to teach someone. Sure.
So I do think it's immoral to tell somebody how they have to feel about anything, period. Like,
wow, yeah. Speak to that.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, when it comes to loving my enemies, I see people in a multifaceted sort of way. So if I were to look at the people that have done me the most dirty in my life, the parts of them that did that thing, that thought in those ways and behaved in those ways, I do not love that structure within them. That structure is awful and it needs to go. I don't love that at all. It needs to go. But at the same time, I recognize that most people also have something within them that is either as it shines now or as it has the potential to shine, that is worthy of being respected and nurtured and valued. So if I could say that I love an enemy, but what I mean by it is I love that within them, either the spark that is or the potential of the spark that could be. I love and value that. Whereas I do not love the larger structure of ideas and thoughts and impulses that did me dirty. So I dissect them in that kind of way, and I make those kinds of differentiations.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. Also, I want to just quickly distinguish between, say, like a Darth Dawkins, who I might be my enemy in a conversation, whereas my point is more when someone actually intends to do you harm or is actively doing you harm, right? That's when it's like totally a different thing. Go ahead, my one black friend.
All right, so here's your Jesus, folks. Here's your few minutes of Jesus. So I want to just address when Jesus is saying, you should love your enemy. It's meant in a way that will reform your enemy, your oppressor. If you return the oppression to the oppressor, you're what? You just spoke about a cycle, James. You're making that cycle endure. Mm-hmm. He says in Romans, not Romans, somebody else says this, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in doing this, you'll be heaping burning coals on his head. So it's sort of that way. How can a person stay cruel if you're kind? Again, so much of the message in early Christianity is about self-sacrifice. Why? Because they're expecting the end of the world. Again, this is an apocalyptic group of people.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, go ahead.
They're in an environment where you have all these Hebrew people who have a long tradition of celebrating and fearing and worshiping Yahweh from the Old Testament. Jesus is essentially his movement is a reform movement of that, where some of the rules that are very heavy-handed are being relaxed. And then Paul, he's a reformer too. You get these other letters where we see this constant reform going on. So whereas in the Old Testament, there's a lot of, God will do your fighting for you. God will fight your battles for you. That's being reinforced here. But now the effort is not in resistance. It's pacifism. Right? They're really going to let God take care of it. They're really going to let God take care of it, and they're not going to get involved If they want something about give them your cloak too. If they ask for your if they ask you to walk with them 1 mile, you walk with them too. Again, it's the idea of giving the people who are persecuting you more than they're asking for. And maybe the people who need your help, giving them more than they are asking for. Why? Because your things, my fortune cookie, my pen, I don't really need these things, right? My lifestyle can kind of prove it. I leave home for half a year. I have a house full of things, 3 cars. I don't really need that stuff. I don't have it now. It's all back there.
Right. Yeah. You're okay.
So, to the point, most of our things we don't walk around with. So I'll circle it back to the enemy portion. If a person is capable of great cruelty, they likely are capable of even greater kindness. And perhaps by snapping that person out of their need to be violent, you then are rescuing that person to be the kind person they want to be. We see that with the Apostle Paul character in the Bible. Saul, right? He's persecuting Christians. One day he has a stroke or an epileptic seizure or whatever. And now, hey, you know what? These Christians were really onto something. I was blind and this guy on Straight Street fixed me up. Now I can see pretty well. And I see I was wrong to ever be bothering those good people. And I'm going to become one of them because it seems like an honorable path.
My one black friend, there's been like a gazillion gems here. One is, so now I'm thinking of this sort of naturalistic Paul apologetic, and it's like, so what? What if Paul was just having an epileptic seizure? So what if that explains why he saw something and the people with him didn't see anything? If he has this radical transformation, maybe your cousin or two that was a Christian, right? And we get this thing, if in the end, he's kind of documenting an early version of what we were talking about at the start of this conversation, working towards a more humanistic Christianity, right? In some sense, he's even saying, even I thought as a Christian, right? He's kind of saying, hey, with that Peter and James are doing, like, yeah, I know they were claiming like they were buddies of the dude and they've got the real Hebrew Jesus's story of how to, fix the Torah. But like, hey, I went up to them for a couple weeks and I was like, hey man, look, let's break bread here for a while, guys. Look, you guys could do that if you want to, but I really think we got to expand this to the Gentiles, make it a little bit easier to onboard, correct some of this Torah stuff. People don't have time for 361 laws, right? So it's kind of weird, like that you guys are making me think of that. Also, you were literally changing my feelings on this. Like, of course, like I think we're all on the same board about, commanding that you love someone that's actively abusing you. But to speak to the value of some of this, you made me think about pacifism. Sometimes what I really reacted to was like, we think of pacifism as, oh, you want to club me over the back of the head? I'm just going to stand here and let you club me over the back of the head and then I'll deal with it later, right? But what I'm really thinking of pacifism is like active. And sometimes it's beautiful, right? And it can be a tactic, almost a military one. So I call it sometimes the power of the powerless. It comes from accepting the reality of your lack of force and then working within that. So the example I gave is when I was in college, I wanted to be a medical marijuana law reformer. I thought if I could legalize pot in my college town, it'd be great practice for law school. 19-year-olds are stupid. All right. But when I did that, I had this problem. Like, I'm a black kid in this majority white campus. I'm on a full scholarship. If I get in trouble with the law, it's going to be a big thing. And like, what I'm going to do if the police come and find me and they target me, or I could be in a lot of trouble. It could like ruin my career before it even gets started. Well, I was like, if they do that, I'm fucked. And I can't stop them. I can't stop them from tapping my phone or making me the target. You're kind of paranoid, right? You're a paranoid kid who smokes a lot of pot. You're like, this could go bad, right? So instead, what did I do? I just worked with the police department. I called the police chief's assistant. I was like, how does he like his coffee? Oh, I got this. I go to the best coffee shop in town. I show up to meet the chief of police. I go, heard you like it black. right? Him and I were good friends from that moment on. I did the same thing with the university police department. I do all these events, and I'd always bring the police department. I'd invite them. Those guys would show up themselves after work. The director of the university police department, the chief of police himself. Why? Because just like I figured out, there's no way I can do this without these guys. And if they actually try to flex their muscles on me, I can't flex back. So kill them with kindness is kind of the only thing I got, right? Better to be a known entity and like they're not going to mess with me than otherwise.
Thrill them with kindness.
Thrill them with kindness, right? And I used to have
a
my
marketing degree, James.
I used to have my dreads.
Thrill them with kindness.
Yeah, I used to have dreads and a staff, right? I was kind of like a Moses figure or whatever, right? And to their thinking, I think they were like, we've had a lot of these radical pot people come along. They're always like shaming the police and speaking out against the police department. I never did that. I always refused to do that. And I also never did public debates, right? I had like an email exchange one time with the police chief about research, and he sent me back some really bad research, and I was like, oh my goodness, if I wanted to make the police and the police department here look stupid, this would be gold. I didn't do that. I scheduled a meeting with them, I ordered the study myself, and I went through it with them and explained why it was bad research privately, right? And so that type of thing, I think, made me like, yeah, and if we got to deal with pot reformers in a college town, we'd rather go with Jay, right, than other people. And so there was a mutual kind of like, thrill them with kindness, right? It went both ways. So my point there is it's not necessarily like a weakness thing. Sometimes it can be, I actually have a goal, and maybe it is to influence these people, but it's better to find common ground and accept the fact that I can't overwhelm them with force, and maybe this is what Jesus is teaching his people. Like, hey, when the army comes, if you think you're gonna be able to get more swords than them and collect more gold, like you might as well quit while you're ahead. So when they roll on y'all, look, invite them in, cook them a nice meal, say, hey, soldier, I know you're probably pretty tired from all that marching, right? And you might survive, and then they'll let you go on ministering.
You do that, you end up with advocates, not enemies.
How do you become the official state religion of the oppressing ruling empire, right? Pretty effective, maybe.
Well, no, it's prove that you're useful.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and then
they
take over your organization and they run it the way they want it to be run, and you don't even know what happened. And then one day you die, and no one knows that you had other motives, you had other ideas about it, because they just go ahead and say whatever about you they wanted to, if they include you at all. Yeah, you just keep rewriting history.
And it's really interesting, like. In some sense, the same way you always say religion is useful, I think really breaking down the sort of tactics and the social bonds and sort of the structure and the methodology of religion allows you to understand what's useful about it and implement it in secular context. James, I wanted to touch on, how did you get involved in the YouTube community? Did you have a growth towards the progression of maybe you start in the comment section and you're chatting? Like, how did you start engaging? What did that process look like for you?
Well, for years, it was just as simple as following and commenting on popular channels for atheist content after I deconverted, thanks mostly to Dark Matter 2525.
Well, so it was a content creator that played a heavy role in that. It's always interesting.
A heavy role in that, absolutely.
Just quickly, I found the content after I deconverted. That's the difference. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, I had spent enough time outside the direct influence of Christian circles that I had begun already to own my own headspace. And so that made it possible to really kind of let it in when I started being exposed to critical facts and logic. And so I watched his video about the flood narrative, Noah's flood. And he just went through one point after the next about how even with God magic, it isn't just that it couldn't have happened. We know it didn't happen this way. We know it did not. And it wouldn't make any sense for it to have happened that way. And it really got me thinking. And that was the beginning of a series of epiphanies that quickly led to my absolute deconversion. That's the floodwaters, the dam burst, I guess was how I put that. And then after that, I just stayed, active, just watching videos and stuff. It really wasn't until MythVision, and then noticing that there was like a recently developing community of networked new fresh content creators, and a lot of them are connected with Rebecca, but they've also got their own channels, and they're actively supporting each other and actively engaged with each other, and they're not just echo chambering because they're including people like Rebecca, and that really impressed me. And there's just, now is the time. There's this whole new social network forming in YouTube, this whole new generation of people that are really willing to have the real discussions and see where they go. And so the more I've been participating in that these last few months, the more I want to be part of it. It's just picking up steam for me.
Talk to me a little bit about, your blog, and where you're going in terms of what you'd like to do on Facebook, what you'd like to do with your channel. What does the future look like for you? And before you do, hopefully I might have a little bit of influence on that, because I'm trying to, as I make friends, trying to bat ideas off each other and see how we can work together. But go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to officially start being a content creator on YouTube. I haven't decided on the exact format yet, but it's coming really soon. Like, I'm ready. I'm there. And in the meantime, I'm open to it. I'm open to suggestions and collaborations. I've been talking to people that say they might want to be part of that on my channel. And I just want to be part of the community, part of the network, and just let it form naturally as we work together, and just see where it leads.
That's great. For me to be explicit, like, what I love is removing barriers to people. So my one black friend kind of hit me up and was like, hey, man, we should do something. And I was like, yeah, let's do something. Because when am I going to get to do something with somebody cool like this, right? And so since I'm kind of a tech geek and I'm a production nerd, actually live in a studio, right? I'm sort of like, hey, maybe what I could do is like take care of the technical headaches and the behind the scenes stuff. That way, for most people, they're like, hey, I want to make content. They could just jump on. And what I'm really trying to do now is like build this network, because it helps me professionally, right? People don't realize I'm an evolutionary biologist, but most people have a sort of a broader tent academically. And for me, my specialty is not just digital evolution, but also the intersection of science and multimedia, right? So one thing my research advisor, my teaching mentor love is that they realize this is all science communication and outreach and stuff like that. So they're like, oh, this is all great for what you're doing. And so figuring out all these technical challenges allowed me to take somebody like you and say, hey, James, you want to help making content? I could like shortcut you to all the stuff we've learned, the sort of, speed bumps we've had to go over and why we choose to do this instead of that and ways we're looking to grow in the future and sort of help people. So I'd love to do that. And then I think with the sort of cult of the flying man, the idea was to really build up, we call it the cult of internet personalities, right? And that my sort of thinking was you have your mods and people that are active in the chat and the community, and they become ushers. And then people that are sort of like no name, they like side men. They want to be like regular panelists and help out, but they don't have their own channels or spaces. I think of them as like deacons, right? They're regular people. They hop on. They're welcome to help us co-host and facilitate anything, but they kind of want to be on the side because they don't have as much responsibility, right? And then the people like Tux or my one black friend who want to, actually have a channel and be a host and do their own thing. I consider them like pastors, and, they've got their own, thing. You should really follow them because they've got their own space and their own kind of way and personality and their own tactics and stuff like that. My one black friend has very different counter-apologetics than Tux, for instance. Totally different, right? Right. And so, I'd love to like, put you on that, sort of roster of people where you have your own channel and I could just help you and get you going and figure out what you want that to look like and be happy to help you with that.
That's a beautiful idea. Yeah, we've each got our own voice as part of the tapestry, and we
Right.
just mutually support each other to go in the directions that we want to go. And I
Yeah.
want to say hi, Rebecca. She's
The other thing. What? Bright of Life is here. Oh
Yeah,
my
she's
goodness. Oh, I can't. All right, I'm gonna get shy and nervous because I feel like every time these community celebrities pop up, like Danny or Rebecca, I start. You can't tell, but I'm blushing. You know. What do you mean you can't tell I'm blushing? You're racist. No. But no, Rebecca. Thanks so much. We appreciate that. And thanks for coming through the chat. You know, I love the viewers, but appreciate people coming through the chat, letting us know they're here. But also, James, we want to get the website going, so this helps kick me in gear on that. And I also want to. I'm into multimedia, right? And so it shouldn't just be YouTube videos. I want us to get in whatever else we want to stream. If you want to do some, craft work or gaming or whatever, but also like your blog, right? I've always wanted to have a website where people can go. So I'm going to find a way to get our website together so people can go to blogs and we can actually kind of follow and support your written content. And then maybe we can figure out a way to start doing broadcasts around your post, right? So that we can use your content to kind of, promote each other.
So I have a friend that I bounce my blogs off of. I don't think I could pay anybody to read my blogs most of the time. And she's like, "Look, you've got a dynamic personality and way of speaking these things to life. And when people are reading it, they're not reading it in your voice. They're not reading the inflections where you want them. They're not reading the emphasis where you want it. They're not getting the entire spirit of what you're saying. And so I think she's right. I need to take the content in my blogs and turn them into something on YouTube." So that
good idea.
I think that's what I need to do with those.
I think that's great. And actually, my thing that I think I'm realizing this: the algorithm just wants content, but different content serves different purposes. So one of the things I want to start doing for this channel and my other channels is producing little videos, because again, it's just easier for somebody to consume and discover a 5-minute clip than a 4-hour stream, right? And so a lot of those things help in terms of they're shareable on social media, they're really great for promotion, and they get people to your channel and they'll like and subscribe. And then when you go live and do a stream, more people can find it and watch it, right? But then again, it's really good to do the live streams, because if you've got a few viewers who will watch your 10-minute videos, even if it's 4 viewers, YouTube is like, dude, if you can get them to stay on this YouTube platform for like 4 hours and just sit there and watch you, and they'll engage in the chat. Oh, YouTube's like, oh, we like this. You're one of our favorite. You might only have 4 viewers, but we love your 4-viewer community. It's active, right? It's engaging. Y'all are clicking links, donating, finding other content, recommending putting up just other YouTube links in the community. Like, they love it, right? So I would suggest doing that. And so what you might do is, as you're writing, as you're revising, sort of do some live streams where you're showing people your process. Because I would love to see how you write. And the writing process is really the revising process. I would watch somebody like you take me through how you're making your little video, right? And then release the video on your channel. And then I'd go, oh, guys, you can make that a little event. Hey, guys, let's go watch the premiere of James's video. And then we see your little 10-minute piece or whatever, and we're sharing that all over the place, right? But you could also put the streams there. So don't be afraid to show people how the sausage is made, so to speak, because I think content is content, and it's great if you just use it strategically.
That makes sense.
Yeah. You guys have any? We try to wrap up usually around 5:30. Oh, wait, we're good. I'm good till 6. So sometimes I have a gaming club that meets at 6 o'clock, but every other week the officers meet at 5:30. This week we're not. We're off. So I'm good till 6. It is about 5:30, so we've got about 30 minutes left. Anything else you got to talk about? I wanted to talk about your content, so thank you so much. That was my big thing. We can always go back to the blog post or any other thing, but my one black friend, I'm sure you've had plenty of thoughts. So what else? Anything else? What else do you want to talk about?
I'll have to excuse myself and come right back.
Oh, good. Take you're fine.
It's like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. You can turn your camera off, mute. You're good.
I'll just mute.
So, James, tell me more about just anything. Yeah, open discussion.
So, a lot of my headspace is pretty controversial.
Oh, yeah, let's get into that. Yeah, go ahead.
If it were to come out completely unfiltered, I'm going to make a lot of people really, really unhappy.
Oh, yeah, no. This is hot program. Turn it up. Turn it up. Give us a little teaser. Let's get hot for a little bit.
So, I mean, you could probably scroll down at some point. I mean, you don't have to do it now, but my blog, like the posts.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Is there something? Give me a highlight from this particular post, maybe, right? So we can promote people to read some more of this.
Let me talk about a different blog that I made that connects to this
one. Oh, sure.
I had this friend, and she had what I call a beautiful soul, and I'm sure she still does. We lost contact, but she would commune with trees. She would go for long walks in nature, and she would swear that the trees had a presence to her, that they spoke with her, not audibly, but she could still feel what they were saying, and she'd have these conversations with them. Now, do I really think she had conversations with trees? No. But what she was doing is she was experiencing herself. She was projecting her own might, her own observations about the world, and her own whimsical nature and her own loving nature. She was projecting that forward, and she was getting it back from the experience. And it was giving her a rare opportunity, a special opportunity to meet herself in deep and profound ways. And I found that was really beautiful. So never even for a moment did I want to tell her, trees don't really talk. You know that, right? I never wanted to come at her as this dry, combative atheist ever. I would never want to take that from her. And so on a certain level, I think that's what happens with a lot of people in their relationship with God, their walk with God. They're experiencing dimensions of themselves, their capacity to be loving and humble and all these other virtues, and it's they're projecting it, and it's coming back to them through the narrative, and in doing so they give themselves they foster that growth within themselves. And it's just a beautiful thing. When I think about it, I almost want to cry. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. You're making me think of my mother and my grandmother and all the people in my family who I just love so much. Yeah, this is the beautiful side, right? Yeah.
Right. So there's this dimension of it. And I've seen this with Christians as well in what they call their walk with God. And so there's a dimension of it, there's layers of it that are good and that are nurturing and wholesome and productive in ways that I think a lot of overly skeptical or overly polarized atheists don't notice or appreciate. But at the same time, the problem that I have with biblical narratives and biblical religion being the means by which this happens is because what that really amounts to is actual people, hiding behind the trees and projecting their voice. So now here you're having this experience where you're meeting yourself, and that's being infused with the voice of other people. So you're not honestly meeting yourself. You're not accurately meeting yourself. It's jumbled in with these ideas from other people, and you're busy with this sense of loyalty to the narrative, trying to harmonize all of that as one voice and trying to justify everything that it says to you with a sense of loyalty to the narrative that overrides sometimes your best judgment. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, you hear people say you're better than the God. You're better than your God. I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's often such an identity reaffirming loop that I think that's what's so difficult people to challenge, because when you challenge their God, quote unquote, belief, it isn't really a belief that you're challenging to them. It's their identity. And I think it's because their entire maturation process has been in that loop. Rebecca, I think, mentioned something about, thinking people might not believe in evolution if they were as critical of it. Sorry, I had to cough. Cameron said, Jay and James, do you guys honestly, and I guess my one black friend as well, you just were away, I think. Jay and James, do you guys honestly take a critical look in evolution as you have done with the Bible? We asked again some other points. I'll still open it up, but I want to hear you guys respond to that. James, I'll start with you, and then my one black friend, and then I'll go last on this one since obviously I have thoughts about evolution.
So there's a very limited scope of applicability for how evolution determines the way that we live our lives. We can look at it in terms of historically how it helped wire us, but our views about whether or not evolution is true and how it did or didn't work don't have a very dramatic or very direct and strong impact on our personal values in the here and now, how we relate to other people, the things that we think are valuable or not valuable, the ideals that resonate for us on a personal level. Like, no matter what we think about evolution, it doesn't have a big impact. For that reason, I haven't spent nearly as much time concerning myself with the details of cell biology or genetics and epigenetics or things like that. A measure of time. I spent a measure of time on the issue. But like you said, I mean, it just requires so many years of schooling to really even get the basics down for evolution, because it's a complex topic with a lot of complex facts to dive through. And I could spend my time that way, but I prefer to spend my time studying things that have a very direct impact on the way that people relate to themselves and to other people, and to understanding not just what people think, but why they think it, and what people feel, but also why they feel it, and what forces of influence can we introduce into that equation to have a positive effect. So if, have I spent nearly as much time studying evolution? No. And it's because it doesn't hold a lot of answers in that domain for me. If I found that it did, I'd spend a whole lot more time on it.
So maybe I'm just trying to make sure I get what you're saying. In some sense, you're saying I haven't been as critical of evolution, but that's also because you don't promote it or see it as necessarily as practical in this space, and you spent more time criticizing faith in the Bible because that seems to be much more central to what actually people seem to believe and how they live based on what they believe.
Yeah, so as far as being critical of evolution, I think it requires an awful lot of formal education to even be qualified to be critical of evolution. I mean, to be critical in a general sense of prove it, that's good. That's a healthy thing, even for any layman.
Sure.
But critical in a sense where you're going to try to dismantle it and disprove it or whatever, like, anybody coming at it from that angle is coming at it wrong. When I look at the Bible and I look at faith and I look at religion and things like that, I'm not looking at it as I'm going to dismantle it and prove it wrong. It's not that at all. I simply want to understand where it's coming from, how it developed, how it affects the way that people relate to themselves and to other people, and differentiate healthy versus unhealthy social systems, and try to find my place within those in a healthy way as well. So, I see merit. I don't throw out baby Jesus with the bathwater. I see merit, just as you guys do, to various things, various ideas that were expressed in Bible stories, and I'm able to say, hey, I love this thing, but I hate this other thing, and I don't feel like I have to throw it all out or accept it all. I don't have loyalty to a narrative, and that's my biggest asset, I think, as a free thinker, is that my sense of worth and identity is based upon basic values that I've really thought through. And so somebody could prove to me tomorrow that there's a super creator. They could convince me, in other words. And it wouldn't really change anything for me because I'd still have the same values that I have now. And I would not adopt a loyalty to a religious narrative, even if somebody convinced me that there is a super creator with a lot in common with Bible God. I would still, if I believed that figure existed, I'd still see his opinions as opinions. I'd still see his failings as failings. It's that simple for me.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, that's great. I just wanted to say that the boom was at Rebecca because she said she thinks any 5-year-old could be critical of evolution. I just love that Rebecca is throwing the bombs, the haymakers, not holding back. We appreciate that. Also, we're definitely going to set up round 2 of Rebecca on Hot Program. Yes. My one black friend, go ahead. Talk to me about evolution, my one black friend.
Rebecca, I used to be 5 years old.
And you couldn't be critical of evolution back then.
I was critical of
you were? All right, there we go.
So let's talk about this. When I was critical of evolution, people sat me down and explained things to me. again and again, and I learned more. I learned the Punnett squares, learned a bit about DNA, proteins, RNA, and things like that. And over time, a very good case was built. I saw in my own family how we shared traits with one another. And then I had a cousin as a child who looked exactly like me. We looked like we were twins, but he had different parents. How is this transmitted? I mean, it's clear there was something at work with genetics there. Meanwhile, at the Baptist church across the street from where I lived when I was 5 years old, I would ask, hey, did Jesus go to other planets and talk to aliens? Shut up, boy. Stop asking questions, boy. Right? Do you see? I got pushback. As I got older and I could understand more what those stories in the Bible meant for myself, there was still pushback. When I would I would ask, like, well, how did God create the world? He simply spoke it into being. Well, all these people around me praying for God to do things, he's not doing anything. I don't see the changes. And yet I learned about genetic mutations, these things that just seem to happen on their own, or maybe there's some environmental factors like medications that cause deformities, or medications that cause humans to I would say their body to shut down or something like that. I would see how environmental factors could affect people. As an adult, I saw Zika come onto the scene, and I saw that there was a commonality in the way that Zika babies looked, just like in Down syndrome people. No matter where they're from in the world, there's a tendency that they sort of look like. So I see if and that's just in my lifetime. Let's say I give it 1,000,000 years. How much? And I isolate certain populations, right? How pronounced are those changes going to be then if they keep happening, and if they're also if they keep being dramatic? I can see that when I look at the Bible and I see God making these promises, and then I learn to write myself, right? I learn to tell a good story. And I see these priests sort of going back through the Bible and cleaning it up, making sure that every objection is answered in print, but not in the real world, right? Well, it's just going to happen on God's time. That's garbage. We shouldn't teach people that. That's wrong. It's not going to happen on God's time. If the world, if there truly was a God that wanted us to have the desires of our heart, why would he wait so long? Why would my uncle, who is right, he was in a bad situation, he kept praying. His funeral flyer, which I looked at last Monday, says Reverend on it, right? He's one of a few clergy members in my family. He considered himself to be very close to God. When he would speak to me, he would often mention God. He knew I was an atheist. He thought it wasn't the best idea of mine. And yet there he was for years, dying in prayer, got to the point where he could do almost nothing for himself and was miserable. Was this so that God could be glorified? No, he was waiting for God to rescue him. He had doctor after doctor trying to help him, but he was waiting on God. And you can say, well, he just didn't pay attention to the people that God sent to him. You mean those guys and gals that learned so much from evolution to get the medicines that they derived that could help his kidneys, stop them from shutting down, and then they finally did. Right? So I think, and I'm not really paying a lot of attention to what she's saying in the chat, but hopefully.
Oh, a lot of good stuff. She said she's looking forward to a conversation about evolution, and she did say at one point that you were conflating genetics and evolution, so we could get into more of that in our conversation. Dirt Funk, B.S. Lewis.
If you don't have genetics, you don't have evolution.
Yeah, a lot of you guys. I appreciate you in the chat.
Unless you're not talking about living beings. including bacteria, you know, if that, because that's a living thing too.
But I just wanted to just make sure we're with you. So what I hear you saying is you can see it. You think just based on what you observe, sitting around the family table, you can see it.
I studied it. It's not just something that is simply obvious, right? Because a person who believes in the God of the Bible, or whatever God you got in your pocket,
Right.
They could say, well, isn't this obvious? Don't I observe this in the world? Isn't this really the mechanism that's at play behind it all?
Yeah.
And be perfectly fascinated and have this wonderful, beautiful, delightful smile on their face while they are lying to me and themselves about the true cause. I don't know how the universe got here. I have no idea. And not so different from James. Quite honestly, if I knew, wouldn't affect my life that much. There wouldn't, if I knew that putting mustard on my chicken sandwich would make the world a better place, fine, I'll put more mustard on it. If that's what it needs. If I have to literally sacrifice doves and burn goats, right? Have the priest kill some goats for me to appease the God in heaven. Does it really work? Is that really apologizing for any wrongdoing I've done? It's going to cost the life of a goat. That'll make you think twice.
Right. Yeah, I guess.
You know.
Yeah. The animal sacrifice. Don't do it so the goat don't die. Yeah, there you go.
Died because I misbehaved and wanted to reconcile myself with God. Are we being honest?
Yeah. So
if we as modern people, when you read that in your Bible, Rebecca, right? When you see sacrificing a lamb for this sin offering, or if you're cured of leprosy, you got to sacrifice 2 turtle doves, and one gets killed and the blood gets sprinkled on the other dove, and you know all this stuff. Do we really need a scapegoat that has
now? Come on, my sins? One black friend. You know we got the one scapegoat. We only got one. We got one sacrifice to end all sacrifices. Now you know that.
As I have stated, and James, you would have missed out on this. As I have stated, I can write a better story. I can write a better story, and it doesn't take me much effort at all. Look, when Jesus died for your sins, the moment you become a Christian, you can't sin anymore. It's not that you don't want to, it's not possible. And this is the example that is set for all the world. See, when you come into Christianity, you are incapable of sin now. You are reconciled to God and your fellow human beings on this earth. And it works. You can test this in Christian after Christian after Christian, and you can't find a Christian that is able to sin. If it really worked, it would be that good. But it's not.
Yeah,
it's not. And that, let me just, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm not trying to interrupt you.
That is what is so dangerous, and people don't see it. That is what is so dangerous when we have politicians that are seeking to make this country follow what's in the Bible, and they have no concept of what's in there. They know some of the stuff that's like the hits, like, oh, I know part of like 11 Rolling Stone songs. But I don't know any Rolling Stones songs. They know part of it. They know what makes it maybe dear, and they're trying to please someone else. But there's some horror stories in there, right? There's some horror stories.
Yeah.
If I'm told as I study the Bible in church that I am supposed to be like Jesus or be like God, if I read the entire thing, I'm not a person who wants to conduct myself in the way that the Old Testament God does.
Right.
I'm not afraid to say it. And if he had a face, I'd say it to his face. I know he's got a backside. It mentions that in the Bible. I'd say it to his backside too. I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I can't pull the universe.
I mean, he's gonna condemn you to hell anyway. You might as well let him know what you really think.
I think he would already know, wouldn't he? He would already know.
Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah, you might as well let it out, right? He already knows.
So I think that's part of the real danger, to uncritically just buy into it. I'm sorry, that's not for me. That's not okay. For a while it was, and I got to the point where I really took a good look at that Bible, and I was like, nah, I can't worship a God who's like this because I don't want to murder anyone.
You're speaking to my soul, because I feel like that's kind of the ultimate confession. And, you know, sometimes I don't want to do the atheist versus Christian thing anymore. I don't want to do it. I honestly want to go back to my Christian self and say, let's battle this out as Christians. Because atheist J, right, only exists because Christian J went looking for the truth. And nowhere in the start of that process did Christian J ever think he was going to become an atheist. So what I really want to ask...
he wants to go back in the Matrix.
I want to go back in the Matrix. And then I want to have a conversation from that perspective and say, tell me what I missed. Tell me, because I guess Jesus didn't love me enough to give me a good enough direct revelation, or, I love when the other guy the other night tried to tell us, oh, you did it because Christians hurt you, bad Christians. I know the best Christians. I know people that people are like, yo, if your grandparents aren't going to heaven, none of us are. I'm like, yeah. So I don't know where this notion of I know bad Christians come from. Most of the best people I know are Christians. It's a script.
It's the script, Jerry.
So, but what did I miss? I didn't read the gospel correctly. What literally it feels like is I was a Christian Bible nerd, looking to find the good apologetics. I wanted to literally learn more about the historicity of Jesus so I could better understand how to live like him and the whole script. And then I got off this path. So tell me what I missed.
Allow me to illustrate. I have a fortune cookie in my right hand and one in my left hand. What does this one say? Does this fortune cookie, does the fortune inside here have something that would benefit your life if you knew what it said?
Say this again. Sorry, I was looking at it.
This is a fortune cookie.
Yeah.
And this is a fortune cookie. Does this have something on the fortune that could be relevant and beneficial to your life?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How about this one?
Of course.
James?
Of course.
Depending on how you interpret them, absolutely.
Wait, did you not say something super key? Depending on how you interpret them.
Wow.
Right?
Here we go.
So I could pick up the Urantia book. I could pick up the Bhagavad Gita. I could pick up the Bible.
Oh, we got high level visual illustration by MyOneBlack Friend. Folks, YouTube content creators, pay attention. This is production value right here. This is show business.
Your sense of humor will get you through difficult times.
Oh!
So James, how would I interpret? I don't know how to do this. How would I interpret this? How would you interpret this in a religious way right now, please?
Through a religious lens?
Yes.
I don't even know. There's no humor in the Bible. Like, Bible God, his entire narrative is just bereft of humor. It's just not there. He way too serious, way too uptight. So religious people appreciate humor. I would say the only way they might appreciate it differently than a secular person is to do the same thing they do with all the other attributes they have to draw from. They imagine that they wouldn't have them at all, except that God's beaming it into their head and giving them the ability to have humor, giving them the ability to have love and peace and kindness.
Oh, what is the essential source of your humor?
And James, that makes you a good communicator to pass on the gospel to those who need it most.
I would say the Lord is speaking to me through this fortune cookie. And what he's saying is when these atheist haters, especially the YouTube perverts, because let's be honest, all these people want to do is just make atheist content so that they can make money and sin off the internet. When they start coming at you with all this counter-apologetics, evidence this, rationality this, you got to just laugh them off. You got to just laugh off the atheist, keep ministering the gospel, keep focused on your work with the Lord. Amen, Holly. Can I get amen, Rebecca? All right, go ahead. What's next? But
okay.
That's what I'd say. What's the next one?
A friend's good advice will deliver great joy.
Wait, say it again. If friends...
Sure. A friend's good advice will deliver great joy.
Oh, this is easy.
Panda Express. All right, James, could we have you elucidate on this in a religious sense?
Well, sure. They're going to be looking for religious fulfillment of it. They're going to be waiting for a moment when a friend gives them some advice, whether it has secular value or whether it has strictly religious value. and they're going to say, look, this thing God communicated to me through this fortune cookie came true, therefore my religion is true. It's just gonna, just gonna turn it into something that validates the narrative, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm. Pocket Locker, how does this?
The Bible says where two or three are gathered, the Lord is in the midst. And so sometimes, the Lord works in delirious ways. And so God can sometimes speak to you in fellowship with the friend,
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter now into the joy. Right?
Hallelujah.
Enter now into the joy.
We need an amen bot. But yeah, Rebecca said you were preaching my one black friend. We got a couple amens. I love it.
I could do it with the best of them, Rebecca. I really can.
I wanted to address the evolution topic, lest I be accused of dodging it, and also to sort of preview our conversation about evolution. I think my take on a lot of this might surprise you guys. So first off, I just want to confess that, like a lot of good Christians understand, you cannot trust people who take money from the government, okay? So this Minnesota ARACTA program, what does this say? It stands for Institutional Research and Academic Career Development Award, all right? This program is an NIH funded, that means National Institute of Health funded collaboration between the University of Minnesota and the nearby community colleges of Blasies and the Glavinoids and the PhD scholars who want to transition to the tenure track faculty positions and research related employment upon completion of their fellowship, folks. All right. So why am I telling you that? That's what we call radical transparency from the pulpit. I'm just laying my cards out there. And so what I'm going to tell you is I don't really care about evolution, okay? Okay, let's be clear, okay? You shouldn't trust me because as you can see, all I do is take your sweet tax dollars. Yes, you out there in the audience. Yes, you, James, you, my one black friend, you, Rebecca. I take your sweet tax dollars and I convert it to this here, stacks and stacks and stacks of cash as the university pays me to indoctrinate children for evolutionary biology. So it might surprise you to hear me say this. I actually don't give about evolution. It's a very utility-based relationship. I just do it for money because I'm corrupt and I've sold my soul to the government. Thank you, America. God bless America. All right. Furthermore, listen up, evolutionary biologists. This is something I've confessed to my colleagues recently. I think evolutionary biology is boring. It's so boring. And you know who makes it boring? Evolutionary biologists make it boring. Oh my God, they're the worst with the genes and the regulation networks and the Blasies and the Glavinoids. Oh, nobody cares. Oh my God, nobody cares. Oh, it's worse. Even you YouTube internet people, y'all do way too much talking in evolution about the abiogenesis and the macular degeneration of the evolutionary and the information can't come from randomness. Oh my God. You guys put me to sleep faster than a goddamn baseball game. All right, now listen, folks. The truth is, I don't think evolution is good. Okay, it's not good, it's not bad, it's a theory, it's a scientific theory, gravity is a theory. If you actually want me to care about evolution and feel responsible to teaching it to you, you have to pay me. That's the point of this. You absolutely must pay me. But sometimes on the internet, I just drop a little nugget on you. But let me be serious, guys. I'm trying to be very serious. I'm trying to save evolutionary biology from itself. It's just so boring, which is why when I did my evolution presentation this year, I did it in costume. We did the call to the flying man. I introduced them to Purple Haze because I just think science communication is awful. And also, evolutionary biologists do what creationists do. They just say, look at the trees. That's what they do. Look at the trees, look at the genome, look at the phylogeny. Nobody cares. Go ahead, my one black friend. Tell them how boring it is.
Never say to me, look at the trees. It is your ruin.
But that's what they do, right? Don't biologists do that? The same thing. Look, guys, look at the trees and it's so. And look, so here's what I do. Honestly, I've told my colleagues, if I'm going to keep doing this for the rest of my life, I see myself as an evolutionary biologist. You will notice the hard E, emphasis on the evil. Okay, I'm trying to study the evolution of bad behavior. And a lot of my research colleagues, we study cheaters, we study like how do people infiltrate different systems, how do you evolve predators. I've recently gotten into evolving digital organisms that practice coercive mating. Yes, literally some rapey ass digital organisms. Oh, are you worried? Don't worry, they're computer programs. No ducks were harmed in the evolution of these coercive programs. But you guys see what I'm getting at. Why? Because it's more fun. I'm not trying to do this look at the trees, feel good about evolution. So if you think you're going to counter-apologize me with Jay, you're corrupt, and you just do science for money and you're part of the great government cover-up, I already told you that. And if you're going to tell me, Jay, you feel good about evolution and you love it and everything, I'll be like, no, I think it's boring. So I think you're right. I don't really care about it. And I'm just trying to actually study the evolution of really bad things so I can agree with you that evolution's bad and it's the reason we're all going to die. All right. So that's my take on evolution. All right. Just so we're clear. It's awful. It's horrible.
So evolution doesn't just say look at the trees. It says also let's look at the flesh-eating bacteria and all these other
There you go. There you go. Let's look at the COVID-19 and the cancer and the blase and the flavonoids. Yeah, it's all terrible.
Sure.
Yeah. So, folks, we could do this show forever, but we got to wrap. That way you guys, we always leave them wanting more, as they say in show business. I want to thank the chat. What up, Hillary's emails? What up, Lena? Bread of Life, Cameron, B.S. Lewis, YouTube Punk. I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch of folks because I don't want to sit here and scroll back through the whole thing. But look, I love you guys. We appreciate you. This has been an incredible stream. It's been super, 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 super fun. James, thanks so much for doing this. We'll keep talking in Discord and talk about what we're doing in the future. We'll definitely have you back on Hot Program. And we're gonna do what we do in order. I'm gonna give my concluding thoughts, then I'm gonna turn it over to my one black friend, and then we're gonna actually let our guest close it out. So my concluding thoughts are: James is awesome. Stay tuned. Love the community. I just want to say on a corny note, we've had some recent YouTube accomplishments, like a viewer count and subscribers and all that stuff going up. So thank you guys so much for supporting us. And one thing I love about this community above all else is that we're all here together. Believers, non-believers, we're all here. We've all got a role to play. And I'm just so happy to see that happening on this channel. Go ahead, my one black friend.
I don't really have anything to add other than many thanks to James for joining us today. It's always nice to have a guest, and thank you for sharing your views with us and your advice. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. And James, the floor is yours. Take your time. Anything you want to say at all.
So I loved being here on this thread. We have a great intermixing or interplay of ideas and energies and thoughts, and it's thought-provoking in ways that I didn't even expect, and I love that I've had this experience, and I hope I get to have many more with both of you. And,
awesome.
So, one thing about the evolution thing.
Yeah, go ahead, go for it. Yeah, take your time.
Evolution does not have a lot of power. Evolution, as a debate or even as a truth versus untruth, does not have a lot of power to sway minds one way or the other about whether or not there's a God, whether or not we should be worshiping him or not. If someone were to convince me tonight or tomorrow that evolution is totally bogus and we must have been created, there is no bridge you could even build to get me from, oh, there must have been a designer, to, oh, well, I must believe in Jesus and the ransom sacrifice and all that other stuff. There's just no way to build the bridge from here to there. So, it's not a sticking point for me. Evolution, a belief or a perspective that evolution is true on my layman part is not what keeps me an atheist. It's not what made me an atheist. It's not what keeps me an atheist. There's no major victory to be had there for a religious person, even if they can convince me that evolution's bogus. It's not gonna, and I'm not gonna end up making some big giant leap of faith to say, oh, well, then all these stories about Jesus must be true. Like, it doesn't logically follow.
Yeah, and you know, bonus conversation, guys. I actually agree with you. Like I said, my thing, I stole it from my teaching advisor, but it's evolution is about as atheistic as plumbing, right? It's just a science, just like the other ones. But at the same time, that's the challenge to people like Bread of Life and Rebecca. The same science, like when you say, hey, I'm down with medicine, whether it's evolution believers or non-evolution believers who develop it, they're all using the same, you know, medicine. Yeah, well, they're all using the same scientific disciplines to study evolution. So interesting how you take the consensus of biology when it comes to medicine, but then not with, again, it's the same biology. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. And even if you want to say something like, oh, well, intelligent design creationism is, you know, not looked at as well much as it should be, and there's some evidence for it, and we've got good evidence from the Bible to believe the testimony of the apostles, well then you've got to then accept that we've got good evidence based on all these other scientific disciplines to accept evolution. Or else I think you're being inconsistent about your assessment of the evidence. But to your point, I don't think it matters because it really doesn't say anything about the atheism versus God thing. I just think you should be consistent about your view of empiricism is all I'm saying. But further, I actually feel the same way about the Bible. This is what people don't get. This is why I called myself an atheist Christian, and I still would if atheists and Christians would let me, which is like I became a full-throated professional evolution person as a Christian. Full-throated Christian. And even when I stopped believing in a literal God and even stopped believing in a historical Jesus, I didn't immediately start identifying as atheist. I literally just thought, oh yeah, God's this idea humans came up with, and religion's always been our effort to like do this humanity thing better, and like religion's the thing we like try to wrestle with it together because it's not the government and it's not, you know, quite family. It's like this in-between thing where we really got to figure it out on our own, right? And so then it was like, oh, Jesus wasn't real, like great. Oh, that means like, oh, he was like a better example because he wasn't real. And then the real is we got to figure out like how the example makes us more Christ-like, right? In other words, I don't think people accept how much you don't have to take the Bible seriously or literally as a fundamental foundation to be a Christian or an atheist. Like I don't think that does as much lifting as either side thinks it does either. I know I might be in a very minority opinion there, but again, that was my actual experience as a Christian. You might not believe it, but I think it was part of the cognitive dissonance and the identity and being in the community was when I let go of biblical literalism and historical Jesus, I was a Christian and remained one for quite some time. And the only reason I really started identifying as an atheist was I got tired of arguing with people about it. Yeah, you know, just my little take on it. Thank you guys so much. I'll let us end there again. I want to thank not just all the chatters, of course, all our mods and all the people that have been super active, but all the viewers, and especially the people who watch this later or just put it on in the background and check out the conversation, even if you don't make it through the whole thing. We really appreciate that. I did put a comment, a question down there in the comment section. So go ahead and answer the question of the day if you don't mind. We appreciate that just as a way to get the conversation going for the people who watch later. Maybe I'll take a shot at it myself just to put something down there people can respond to. Want to thank our guest, James Apperson, again for helping us out here. In the name of the dark. Wait, before I forget, check out James's channel, right? Can they just, can we click on your name and look up James Apperson and your channel will come up, and also follow his Facebook. Anything else you want to plug?
So my Facebook has my blog link, and really that's going to be advertised heavily by me, at least, once I actually turn it into video content. That's going to be the thing, so watch for it. All right, so just be ready.
Facebook and YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Yep, be ready.
Anything else you want to plug, my one black friend? Oh, no, go ahead.
No,
All right. I'm doing the Christopher Hitchens audiobook series later. I'll be live in a few minutes on Pocket Locker 86, and then I'll be doing the audiobook. I decided to do like an atheist audiobook series. We call it the Atheist Crew Book Club. That'll be tonight at 11 p.m. on BUNDY. But if you want more content from me, Pocket Locker 86 is always the way to go right now. Like I said, I'll be live on Pocket Locker 86 in about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just going to go to the restroom and then fire it up, do some stuff with my gaming club before tonight's book club show. And then, thank you, everybody. I'm going to call it. Thanks again. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless all of you. Be good to yourselves.